7 p.m. Before we begin our council meeting, we have another item that we wish to add to our grab and go kit. And this evening's item is a flashlight. This is a special waterproof flashlight. And we have here taking my picture, Carly Blatz, who is the newest reporter for the Alberni Valley News. Welcome, Carly.
Photobomb.
No, Jake, it's too heavy to carry in here. It's just, you know, we found that we haven't been to the gym enough to be able to carry it all in. No, I'm just kidding. It's right here. Next time we're putting in a pair of old shoes, so it'll get much heavier. The flashlight is important because you never know what time of day or night this event could happen, and we want to make sure that not only is it waterproof, but that it's usable, so the LED bulb will keep the batteries fresh for longer than they would otherwise, but we do urge that when you do put your flashlight aside, that you check the batteries, check it every now and again to make sure that the batteries are still working. And I'm sure there's some significance to the balloons that we will find out shortly. Other than special birthday balloons for somebody, I'm sure. Council, we have an agenda, a motion to approve the agenda after I check with two questions. Councillors, any late items? And City Clerk, any late items? Okay, in that case, a motion to approve the agenda would be in order.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Second? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. And Council, we have the minutes of a special meeting held at 2 p.m. on January 25th, special meetings held at 7 a.m. and 5:45, and a regular council meeting held at 7 p.m. on February the 16th. Motion to adopt those minutes would be in order.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. And public input period. This is an opportunity for the public to address council on topics of relevance to City Council. A maximum of 4 speakers for no more than 3 minutes each can be accommodated. Does anybody wishes to address council? And in that case, delegation. First delegation is Mr. Russell Dyson as CAO for the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District. Welcome, Mr. Dyson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and Council, members of the public, staff, and those in the television audience. I'm here tonight for 2 reasons, and to do the annual report on the Regional District's budget process, and also to talk to you about organics and the Regional District's Alberni Valley landfill and the solid waste management plan. So I'll begin with a talk about the budget process. Why the balloons? Well, if you take a look at our logo, you'll notice that we're celebrating 50 years of the Regional District. Regional districts were established by the province in the 1960s. Ours will be turning 50 in April of this year, so our logo is representing that, and the Regional District will be undertaking some celebrations to honor that. And tonight I bring 50 balloons to celebrate that, but also there's going to be another purpose to those balloons as I talk to you about Regional District services as well. So I've provided for you, Mayor and Council, an outline of my presentation. Please follow with that. I've got a couple of things to refer to as well. So just a little bit about the Regional District, the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District, as I try and figure this out. There we go. The Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District covers an enormous, beautiful landscape on the west coast of Vancouver Island in the heart of the island. We have 3 municipalities, Tofino, Ucluelet, and the City of Port Alberni. We have 6 rural areas, Long Beach, Banfield, Cherry Creek, Sproat Lake, Beaver Creek, and Beaufort. And those were the traditional makeup of our regional district. But in 2011, as a result of the Monmouth Treaty, One of the requirements of that treaty with the 4 First Nations in our regional district is that they would join our regional district, and they have 10 years to do so. 2 of them chose to join immediately. That's Ythluthat government near Ucluelet and Huayet near Bamfield. And they've been members since 2012. Uchucklesset joined us last year. Tokwat is the last one. They are going to be observing and participating, will likely join in the next 2 or 3 years. So now we have, with the rural members, 6, municipalities, 3 is 9, an extra director for the city of Port Alberni is 10, and 3 First Nations, a board of 13 members. So the purpose of regional districts: in the 60s, there was a dilemma in the province. There was unprecedented growth in rural areas. We needed to provide service to those areas that weren't incorporated. So on the left-hand corner is local government for electoral areas. We provide services to the rural areas. Examples, in our case, the Beaver Creek Water System, Salmon Beach Services on the West Coast, and the Sproat Lake Fire Department. Then there was another purpose, and that was the bottom right corner, shared services across the region. Regional districts enabled their municipal partners, First Nations, and rural areas to get together and share on services. Not everybody wants to have a landfill. It makes sense that we cooperate and share on a landfill. So the AV landfill, the Alberni Valley share that service. The AV airport and general government. These are services, examples of our services that are shared by either all or a portion of our members. Then the top right corner, shared services across other regional districts. Lately, probably in the 80s and 90s, it became apparent that services needed to be shared with other regional districts. 2 of those examples are the North Island 911 call answering service that is shared with the regional districts on the north of the island and Powell River, and then the Vancouver Island Regional Library. Our regional district contributes to that with the 44 or so other members on behalf of our rural directors. Each municipality also contributes to that and participates. And then finally, in the bottom left-hand corner, not an official purpose for regional districts, but when you get politicians recognizing the interests of their rural area, of course they are going to lobby and push for interests of higher levels of government in the interests of their region. So our regional district has a very important role in pushing for things like the highway connector, better health services, and concerns about provincial downloading. Just some of the issues they've addressed in the last little while. There are very specific rules for a regional district, and that's important for our discussion tonight because we don't function like a municipality. We don't function like a business. It's a highly accountable level of government, and it ensures that those that benefit from the services pay the costs. So the financial rules, as dictated to us by provincial legislation, areas are only charged for the services they are provided. Services are independent. We have to have a separate and distinct budget for each one of our 47 services. And we cannot transfer revenues or expenditures between services without there being a reflected cost. So for instance, if we wanted to borrow a fire apparatus from Sproat Lake for Beaver Creek, they would have to pay the market rate for that. They couldn't just borrow it because it's the regional district. And then ultimately, although we have these different services, ultimately the entire board is responsible for the administration of those services. They wouldn't exist without the regional district. So with that in mind, our regional district, each service pays its own way. Now, how do we cover cost? Principally from tolls or taxes. Obviously, we push for government grants when we can, but there is some operating funds provided by government, but for the most part, those are for our capital things. But we recover our costs from tolls or taxes. Then, how do we allocate staff time and resources across those 47 different services? Well, not everybody benefits from certain expertise that staff have, so we allocate our time on the basis of the needs of each one of our services. Every year we take a look at the past and we take a look at the future and allocate staff time across those 47 services to ensure that each one is paying for what they're going to get. And then finally, our board is very adamant in pursuing alternatives for service delivery. And what do I mean by that? Our services are provided by many different ways. We rely on employees where it's required. We also rely on contract services. The Alberni Valley and West Coast landfills are done on a contract. We have a prime contractor in place that looks after both of those services, Barrie and Vale. We also rely on volunteers, heavily rely on volunteers, and many of our services couldn't function without them. The benefits of the Sproat Lake Volunteer Fire Department, Bamfield Fire Department, Beaver Creek Fire Department, but also we have many volunteers that are helping us deliver services for our parks, as well as our various different committees providing advice to the board. We only have 22 full-time staff, and they're split across the Alberni Valley and the West Coast. But another role, and I know the city is interested in this, and I think the chair and your mayor are reaching out about this, is looking at shared resources. It's something we've done in the past and can do more of in the future. One example is economic development. Your economic development manager has provided some funds by the regional district so that he provides a service across boundaries. Building inspection. Although we have our own building inspectors, they share time on holidays and time off to ensure coverage can be provided. And then finally, I don't have it up there, but a very important one that we're expanding further now is emergency preparedness. Our Emergency Operations Center is to be manned or staffed by both regional district, city employees, and volunteers. We're looking at developing a cast of 50 people, and many of those will come from the city. The regional district, with its fee-for-service, looks after coordinating that role. As I mentioned, various different committees. Now we have 47 services, and here tonight are 50 balloons. 47 of those represent the services that we provide right now. The blue balloons represent services that are provided only to the rural areas. The orange balloons represent those services that the municipalities participate in. This balloon represents the two services of the West Coast, the landfill and the airport, that's Tofino and Ucluelet. The other orange balloons, there's 11 of them altogether, represent the services that the city participates in. So what are they? General government. The moment the regional district was born, government was created. We had to hold meetings, we had to have agendas and minutes, we had to be accountable. So general government, that form. The 911 service you participate in. Alberni Valley Emergency Program and Alberni Valley Service. Solid waste management you share with the rural directors of the Alberni Valley and Banfield. The Alberni Valley Airport is the same. Regional water, regional planning, regional parks, custom transit, the Sproat Lake Marine Patrol, and grants and aid. I'm sorry about the red. That covers some of the services that are examples of other areas that you don't pay for. Now, in each group of balloons, there is five services here. I'm going to give those to Councillor McLennan, because he's one director. And I'm going to give the other 6 to the mayor, because there's something about voting at the regional district that represents the number of balloons each of them get.
There's only 5 there.
Cheated. So I gave the wrong group to Councillor McLennan, so I'm sure he'll share.
It's okay.
So, because there can be an imbalance in terms of costs and whatnot, the city having a larger population, a larger tax base, there's rules within regional districts about voting when it comes to contracts and money matters. It's called weighted voting. So your municipal members on our board, one of them has actually 5 votes, and that's the mayor, so that's why I intended on giving him more balloons. And the other one has 4 votes, and that's Councillor McLennan. Other areas, Sproat Lake has 3, Banfield has 1, and such. So when it comes to those financial matters that pertain to you, you get a weighted vote or a little bit more say to reflect your larger population. It's population that defines them. So a little bit about the numbers for the city. So we have a very large budget, but the tax requisition for the city is approximately $1.6 million. That's the 2015 figure. We're not yet 100% sure as to what it is for this year, but we'll know shortly. These next figures are what I do know. Out of all those 22 staff members, you pay $215,000, or 11% of regional district wages. That's because most of the wages are allocated to the regional services and paid for by those areas. Then there are 3 services that is money in and out. We don't manage it, but we collect it and transfer it. $133,000 we collect from you, and that goes to multiplex debt. $112,000 comes from you, that goes to the North Island 911 Corporation. We do get a vote on that, so we have some say in the way it's managed. $92,000 approximately to custom transit, and 0. The Sproat Lake Marine Patrol went to referendum a number of years ago. The last 2 years, the tax requisition for that service has been 0. And that goes to show the success we've had with respect to grants that Transport Canada has paid for the costs in the last 2 years. So financial plans, as with the municipality, we have to adopt them for 5 years, based on 5 years. And we adopt them before March 31st. And there's a budget of approximately $25 million per year for the entire regional district. The other thing that that same board manages is the hospital district. And it's the same board, but it's kind of a different function, and that is we collect 40% of the debt on capital costs for West Coast General, Tofino General, and the Bamfield Medical Station. So we help to fund the debt. So for instance, we're collecting money, our principal payment, $1.7 million a year, is paying down the debt at the West Coast General Hospital. If there's an expansion of the Tofino Hospital, again, we'll be responsible for 40% of the debt. So some of the highlights in terms of our services, what have we done with the money and the people and such? Highlights are the Alberni Valley Regional Airport runway design and approvals, a huge project. 3 applications unsuccessful, unfortunately, made for grant funding. Many thanks to Pat Deacon for his assistance on the business plan and such. A ton of work to prepare the detailed drawings and design and have them ready for tender, and the approvals required for the Crown lands to make sure our obstacle limitations are met. The regional district is considering a regional parks and trails plan. The Dog Mountain fire last year took a tremendous amount of time. And finally, we've been working on solid waste management plan review, and I'll talk about more of that when it comes to the organics. Upcoming for 2016, it is proposed that the Alberni Valley Regional Airport expansion will proceed. It should be advertised for tender in the next couple of days. Anticipated completion date would be September. Exercise coastal response. The province is doing a mock tsunami and earthquake within our valley. We will be participating in that. It has some cost implications, but we're looking for funding from the province. The Alberni Valley landfill, we continue to work on security of the title to the property and the southeast expansion. Implementing our solid waste material bans, more of that later, and the agricultural plan initiatives. Our expenditures by service, by far, for this year, because of the capital costs, airports are a tremendous expense because of the $6 million anticipated for the Alberni Valley Airport. We're also doing a $1.5 million lighting improvement at Long Beach. Typically, our landfill is one of the highest costs, up close to $4 million. Our sources of revenue, I touched on this before, taxation, grants, borrowing. Again, grants will fluctuate or vary depending on capital projects. New to this year is borrowing, and that reflects the fact that we will be borrowing money for the Alberni Valley Regional Airport expansion. Tax rates, we're not a tax collection service. The province does it for us. So they set the rates based on our budget. Preliminary tax estimates for the City of Port Alberni. What these do is look at the overall amounts and whether there's a decrease or increase in the tax revenue required for each one of the services. It shows you that general government is going down for you. There's a couple of increases for regional planning. The AV Regional Airport is our largest tax center, $227,000, reflecting the contribution to capital costs for the project for this year. And finally, regional water. We looking at a plan to isolate water from Sproat Lake, working with the Catalyst system to bring it to the community. Grants and aid may change from one year to the next depending on demands, and it's up slightly this year. So the total increase is $232,000, 24% increase, but again reflected in the commitment to the Alberni Valley Regional Airport. Tax requisition over the last 5 years. The yellow line indicates where we would be at if there was no airport expansion. Basically, it would be flatlined, equivalent to last year, our tax requirement from you. The increase predominantly on account of the Alberni Valley Regional Airport. And just a note, our fees, the landfill, costs are 100% recovered by tipping fees. We do not put any of your taxpayers' money towards it for capital or operating. We do it all by tipping fees. The only exception is on the West Coast landfill. These services, not those, have to tax to operate that one, and Bamfield contributes to their tipping station. Fees are proposed to increase from $95 a ton to $115 a ton. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Bearing in mind, our fees are the lowest on the island. Regional District Hospital, again, capital funds for the hospital facilities within the region. The hospital district is paying 40%, I mentioned. The budget includes $550,000 equipment grant. That's an annual amount. A planned renovation is in the works for the emergency room. It was to be in 2014, but it looks as though it will be realized in 2017 or 2018, based on the demands and other projects that Island Health have in the works. So the requisition for the hospital district has been going down. Again, it's been going down on account of the management of our debt and the payoff of that debt and our ability to do it faster than anticipated. So the tax impact when it's all said and done to the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District, these are based on a property of $175,000. I'm thinking that's the average within your community. It would realize a net increase for both the hospital and regional district services of $17 based on this budget as it is. So next steps, the budget has not received first reading. That will be considered by the board on Wednesday. It will be subject to a public consultation on March the 16th at 6 p.m. So come and see in detail if you're a member of the public and you have input or questions. Third reading and adoption is anticipated for March 23rd. So what I'm speaking to you today are plans, proposals. It's not set in stone. Still lots of time for input. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dyson.
Any questions on the budget before I go on to organics?
Councillor Sauvé and then Councillor McClement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dyson, for coming here. I just had two questions. I noticed in one of your graphs for 911 services and having to do, it's not having to do only with the lines, that's including the police services and so forth?
So 911?
Yeah.
So what we pay for is we pay the call answering service. When you phone 911 and somebody says police, fire, ambulance, that's ECOM in Vancouver that's answering the phone. We pay them to answer the phone and do that.
Okay.
Then we also pay for those calls that are transferred to fire. We look after the fire dispatch that's provided to us by Campbell River Dispatch. So we look after that, and then we look after the infrastructure that ties that network together.
What's the regional district's contribution towards policing costs?
For the rural areas, your contribution to policing costs is through the provincial taxes. So people will pay an amount based on land and assessed values to provincial taxes, and a portion of that then is transferred to you, the regional, or to those municipalities that have policing services for provincial.
Thank you. My second question has to do, and it's been a topic with the public, is with the airport expansion and the fact that we did not get those federal grants, what kind of impact would that be towards the taxpayers for not only the city, but the regional district?
So what is anticipated is that the project will be $5.9 million, and the board has made the commitment to proceed on that on the basis of borrowing. Ultimately, the actual costs that we realize will be subject to the tender process and the bids. One would hope we will receive favorable competitive bids. There's two things in our favor. Well, one really, and that's the cost of fuel. It's a fuel-based project. We're moving a lot of earth. The other thing is that the contractors will be looking for this type of work, we anticipate, and the cost of the asphalt, again, is affected by the price of oil. So those are sort of two or three positives, but you never know until you tender the project. Ultimately, the board does not approve the project until they receive the tenders and decide on that. But they're anticipating 5.9. And so my slide that showed overall taxation of $17 increase, really that's the impact of the airport. Without the airport, next year's tax would probably be flat, no increase for that property.
And to offset the cost, has there ever been, I haven't asked this before and I got confusing answer, is there going to be any ventures for commercial use?
So with an expanded airport, there's a number of opportunities that we will see. First and foremost is new employment. It's realized that there will be investments made to operate at the airport by operators that are there that will create new employment to our community. Second of all, larger footprints by those aeronautics operations mean more lease revenue for us. And third, as time goes by and more traffic comes to the airport, we can start charging fees for landing and passenger fees, and those in turn will help us offset our operating costs.
Okay, so there is no approaching commercial ventures yet for transportation?
For
AirBC, anything?
We've put the word out in terms of what's going on and what's happening. We've advertised the opportunities. There's a lot of buzz in the aeronautics community about what's happening here. So
But
it's a matter of time.
that is a venture that we might be looking at in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. There is some lands available at the airport that can accommodate additional airport investment.
Thank you.
Councillor McClement and then Councillor Washington.
Yeah, just a quick question, and thank you, Russ, for your good presentation here. What's do you know on the top of your head what the final date is for paying for the multiplex?
I don't offhand, but I'll get
Okay.
that. I'll get that for you for Monday, or Wednesday, I should say. Yeah.
Just some people are asking.
It's fairly soon, but I'll get you the date.
Councillor Washington?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, nice, good presentation, Mr. Dyson. On your landfill, you're saying our fees are the lowest in the island. Are we so cheap that we're getting waste trucked in from other communities?
Good question, and that is a concern of the board and a concern of ourselves too, that could happen. When does it become enticing for people to bring waste over? What I can say is this, is that there is a little dribble. What will happen is that a commercial operator that's doing his routes here might bring some of his waste over from the other side. It appears that way because some of the waste appears to be coming from that way. The other thing that will happen is an individual with a one-ton truck renovating his rental cottage in Coombs or something may decide to bring it here rather than there. Things that are hard to stop or deter, but those kinds of things happen. But what I can say is there's no sourced materials that are solely coming here because of that, so full loads or otherwise. Our landfill operator is told very clearly to make sure that they, on commercial operations, if it's a tear down or whatever, to find out what the source is and not permit waste coming from the other side when we know it's solely coming from that side because of that. I will talk to you a little bit about the rates and the changes that we've got proposed, and that will help deter that potential too.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Paulson?
Thanks, Russell, for the presentation. The balloons ideas and stuff like that, I think that's probably coming from Jennifer.
I'll never
Or
never
standing
disclose my
standing
sources.
out there scooping
Yeah.
stuff in the barn.
Yeah, manure moment.
Anyway, just a question for general knowledge, just your general impression. You have a cardboard ban in the landfill at the moment, and how's that program going? And
Yep,
is
good.
it successful? And
I think very good, and if commercial operators have any other concerns otherwise, that it's not, we don't need to hear from you if people think otherwise, but from our perspective it's gone well. There's been more commercial outlets contracting to have their cardboard removed. We talk to our operator regularly, and apart from small amounts that are indiscriminately in some loads, it isn't what it used to be for sure.
Thank you. Oh, Mr. Dyson?
So, sorry, you have to hear my voice once more. Maybe I can use my deep, sexy voice for this one. Change it up a little. Talking about organics, after all. Yeah. So, hi, Russell Dyson, CAO Regional District. Thank you, Mayor and Council, members of the public. I'm here to talk about the Alberni Valley Solid Waste Services, and in particular, organics. So, we're well aware that the community has been calling for, asking about an organics collection or us removing organics from the landfill. And organics are one of several issues that the regional district is tackling at the landfill, and I just want to take a look at the big picture as well as talk to you about organics in particular. There are really 5 priorities that we've been grappling with for the service over the last couple of years. First and foremost is landfill monitoring. We spend a ton of money monitoring the landfill, monitoring water, and ensuring that the landfill is a tight unit that does not have escape of water or pollutions outside of the boundaries. And it's been a very successful program, but as the landfill expands and we continue to have more waste there, we continue to drill wells and provide expanded monitoring to make sure that that's the case. Landfill tenure. The landfill is situated on provincial land. We do not have tenure for that land. We have been working for the last 5 years with our First Nations partners, and that communications has been great, but we are not yet at the point where there is satisfaction from their concerns with respect to the landfill being granted tenure from the province. So we operated on a month-to-month basis. But what I can say is that we've met with the council on several occasions. We've provided tours. We've provided an outline as to what we do in the landfill. We've heard their concerns. We've been to a public community meeting to hear their concerns as well, and we're addressing them. So it's an ongoing thing. But first and foremost, priority, we need tenure for the landfill to expand for the future. We have multi-million-dollar projects to manage it appropriately, and we need to know that. The southeast expansion is an example. There is a large area of the landfill we're presently not using because it needs a barrier to be put in place to ensure that there is not leachate that goes out. That's a $2 or $3 million project, so we want tenure before we commit to that. We've been improving recycling. I think the 3rd Avenue Recycling Depot is an example of that. Partnering with MMBC has been good. in many respects, and we've seen the results of that, so implementing that. And finally, the material bans. Cardboard is in the past. We're now moving on to chip rock and other things that we will see improvements on this year. There are challenges for organics collection. That's why it hasn't been an easy choice to jump into it, especially within the valley. The ACRD also has a sound record in practical, financially responsible solid waste management. And what we do moving into the future, we want to ensure that, that we don't make unintended consequences as others have. And finally, landfill gas collection is a big issue at the landfill. As our deposits increase, we will come to a tipping point where the province will demand that we put in a landfill gas collection system. That is in the millions of dollars of cost. We would probably see it funded by taxes. We would go beyond the point where we could fund such a project by tolls, so we don't want to get there. We're very aware of that. So we need to reduce waste. So organics, let's talk about organics. Just to clarify what we mean, there's a variety of kinds. Food waste, there's stuff you can compost in your backyard, fruits and vegetables and the like. There's stuff you shouldn't compost in the backyard, meats, bones, breads, and non-liquid dairy fats. And then there's yard and garden waste. No government program to collect yard and garden waste, although we do collect it at the landfill and charge nothing or very low fees for that and manage what we are brought to the landfill, but there's no program to collect it otherwise. And then clean wood, either from property clearing or from woody debris from demolition and such. Right now, neither yard or garden or clean wood are issues at our landfill. Those materials don't go into the landfill itself. We do separate them, we do chip them, and we get rid of it to other sources. That's a cost to us now, but that's what we do. On Vancouver Island, we're well aware of the different facilities up and down the east coast, all supported by a large population base, very close together, easy transportation amongst them all. Some of them have had issues with respect to smells and odors. Nanaimo, or Coast Environmental, I think it is, on Duke Point. Anybody driven by there? Problems in the Capital Regional District with a former farm, the Stanhope Dairy, no relation to my in-laws, having enormous issues that a private enterprise undertook composting that went out of control in a rural area. So we have to be careful of the two options. Now, what I want to talk about is just the Alberni Valley landfill and our competitive advantage to our neighbors. And this is what we have to be careful of moving into the future. The Alberni Valley has no tax contribution to either operating or capital costs. All other regional districts contribute to their operating costs with taxes, as well as their capital costs. This chart was prepared by a consultant that has been working with all the regional districts to find joint solutions on solid waste. The taxation referred to as 183 within our regional district. That's the West Coast, because operating the landfill there is much more difficult, and we do have to, the West Coast has to, not Port Alberni or the Alberni Valley contributes to that. And then another small portion is provided to Bamfield just for their collection of their waste. In the Alberni Valley, it's just tolls. Our tipping fees. We can only charge fees for required expenses. We can't charge fees for just general revenue or for other purposes. We have to justify our fees on the basis of the costs we realize. Our fees, $95, have afforded us the ability to have a multi-million-dollar reserve in place for the closure of the landfill. That's a regulated requirement. That is in place. We have the monies to enable us to close the landfill in the 50 or 60-year lifetime. We also have done all the improvements, all the wells and otherwise at the landfill with the use of fees. But at $95, we are at this year now coming to the point where we do need to increase them. And what's anticipated is an increase to $115 per ton. So we'll be getting up there. Organics, what is proposed? I provided to each of the council members, and our report will be on our website if it isn't made available public as of yet. I provided you with the executive summary from Carrie McIver. She took a look at organics in particular with respect to the viability of organics collection within the Alberni Valley. And the conclusions of her report, outlined in the executive summary, I have here somewhere. So, given the current tipping fee for garbage of $95 per ton and the yard waste disposal is free, it is believed that organics diversion is not practical in the Alberni Valley at this time. Consequently, the organics diversion strategy arising from the assessment does not contain a clear and immediate path towards implementing organics diversion at this time. So basically, her view is we're not quite there yet. She's provided us recommendations to the board of $133,000 in expenses, principally to create a diversion strategy where we ask residents to take responsibility for their garbage, take advantage of the opportunities of having your own composter in your home. We've provided 1,200 of these to some residents of the Alberni Valley. We need more to do that. We need people not to produce as much waste and become responsible. It's worth a try. It is the most cost-effective and environmentally friendly solution. So over this next year, let's give it a try. Reduce waste by educating, informing people of the benefits of doing it themselves rather than government taking it over. Also, we will review wood waste processes throughout the Alberni Valley, develop the landfill gas options and costs, so I can say to you it's not millions of dollars, it's precisely this amount of money. These are the benefits and costs. A pilot program working with the city for organics collections to see how it might work and how we might be able to process it. And organics options for commercial and institutional sectors. The directors on the committee felt that what we need to do is concentrate our efforts in commercial and institution. By far, they have the majority of potential waste in terms of organics, so let's focus on getting them opportunities to get that out of the landfill to other sources. Finally, support services for $20,000. So staff's draft plan, which will be presented to the board for consideration over the next couple of years, is that. Basically, it takes the $133,000 worth of recommendations of the MacGyver report, scales them down to an Alberni Valley solution. And just finally, I'll sum it up by some of the other projects that we have on the go for the Alberni landfill. We will be spending $115,000 for gyprock recycling, making sure it doesn't go into the landfill. We have improvements to make to the access road. As I said, the leachate management and monitoring will be improving that. The northeast expansion, and finally, recycling depot improvements. The improvements that you see at the depot are being assisted by a grant that we received to celebrate Canada's birthday coming up. And so at least half of the improved costs of a new roof and new facility outdoors there are being paid for by that grant, and you'll see that opening this spring. So that's it for organics, and I'll answer your questions.
Council, any questions? Russell, thank you so much for your presentation. You had a lot to say in a relatively short period of time.
Thank you.
Didn't know you could speak so quickly, but you did a good job. I do have a question about the gyprock recycling. When it gets recycled, what happens to it?
Gyprock goes to the lower mainland, and there's a facility in the lower mainland that processes it and makes it into a product that's reusable or otherwise. Exactly what, I'm not sure, but we do have to ship it to the lower mainland right now.
So do we collect it at the landfill and then take responsibility and ship it over when we're
Yep.
ready?
So what we would do is create a proper facility to store it, because it has to be kept dry, because the wetter it gets, the more expensive it is. They charge per ton, so we have to do that, and a lot of work is done in the winter, so making sure it's environmentally protected, and then we'll have to pay the costs on a regular basis to ship it over to Vancouver. It's being done by a lot of the other municipalities, so we're very confident in terms of what prices we'll be paying based on our position.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Washington?
Recycling. People have been asking where, when they bring their bag full of plastic bags to the recycle bin, what happens to them?
Good question. I don't know, but I'll get the answer to you. Yes. Where do bags go? We want to make sure that they don't go back in the landfill.
Councillor Paulson?
Just on your second to last slide there, Russell, and the composting stuff, doesn't refer anything to food waste. What would be the short-term solution there?
So sorry, I'm in the hospital budget. So basically, what we would like to do is residents to try and deal with it themselves by composting their vegetable materials at home, by reducing the amount that they purchase in stores, by reducing the amount of waste that's created in the first time, provide education as to how that can be done. Try there first. And then it's working with the institutions and commercials. So those are the grocery stores, the hospital, and other areas that are high producers of food waste. So we will work with them for solutions that will likely mean trucking it out of our community as opposed to processing it here.
All right. Mr. Dyson, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. The balloons are a gift from the regional district to the city, celebrating
Thank
our
you.
50 years. Birthday cake to come. Thank
All
you.
right, we'll redo the favor and return the favor next year. And our council, our third delegation is Wes Hyde from Viridian Energy Cooperative. Mr. Hyde, welcome.
Hello, thank you very much, Mayor, Council, staff, and public. So I'm here to talk about solar, how it would help or work in the Alberni Valley, and also show examples of how it's been used elsewhere. My name is Wes Hyde. I'm one of the founding members of Viridian Energy Cooperative. So we're an installation company. Our purpose is to do the installation, not run NGOs or anything to promote solar. So why solar? It's renewable, so carbon reduction, resilient, reliable, safe, and it's cost effective. We're now getting to the point that solar is reaching pretty much grid parity. Grid's going up, solar's coming down, and we're getting to the point where people are making large investments in solar and they're getting reasonable gain, better than other better than GICs and stuff like that. So people are actually taking their money out of pensions and investing it in solar. So grid parity is there, and options to support solar for you guys could be grants for homeowners or property owners, property tax breaks, develop your own district energy type projects, or facilitate community-owned projects. So the community-owned is where it's funded by the public, but Port Alberni or the Alberni Valley may facilitate a project. So it might be land or rooftop space. So grants to the homeowners. Some of you guys may recognize the Eco Energy, Live Smart. So those are past incentives where renewable energy, electrification of transportation, solar Colwood was like heat pumps, solar, and other energy efficiency upgrades. And growing forward is actually a federal and provincial territorial incentive. So in Alberta, for example, they're funding farmers to start producing their own power. So farmers are covering their barns with solar, and they're farming solar as well as their regular crops and dairy and such. So those are things that can be facilitated. The property tax breaks, so New Hampshire, Manitoba, Colwood, it's all part of the tax exemption. It's RSA 6172, which permits towns and cities to create a revenue neutral. So you're not adding property tax to other revenue bases, so the property tax doesn't go up for them, but you're reducing the property tax for people to do projects. So it's not going to de-incentivize renewable energy projects. It doesn't go for wood stoves or like conventional stuff. It's renewable energy, solar, photovoltaic, wind turbines, and central wood heating systems. So district energy, this is where it starts to get into, who plays at the game. The city of Kimberley invested huge into what they call the Sun Mine, and it's on an old mine site that was from Tech Canada. So they invested $5.3 million, and they own their own system, and they sell to BC Hydro at a fixed contract for over 25 years. So, and they actually went to referendum, and they saw overwhelming support that the city actually borrowed money to do so, and they actually borrowed about $2 million. So other examples here, Revelstoke Community Heating System, and then others such as the Southeast Falls Creek Neighborhood Energy and Whistler's system there. Those are energy recovery. So they're using energy recovery out of wastewater, which is actually surprisingly warm as it's flowing through the ground. SFU, Unicity, Dockside Green, those are examples of using wood streams and actually using for either steam generation, and also you can do cogen where you're generating electricity from your waste wood streams. Community energy, that's more where the actual members within the community front the investment rather than the government itself. So the one that I want to kind of highlight there is the Nelson Hydro. They just started selling, and they actually sold their pre-selling like early investment options, sold out quickly. So they have a community solar garden. So Nelson has their own power corp up there rather than BC Hydro. So the community had the option to buy, you either buy 1, 2, 3 solar panels, and you don't own the solar panels, you own the energy that's produced from those solar panels. The Nelson Hydro actually owns the system, and they get 25, the people that fund the actual modules get 25 years worth of power from however many modules they buy. So there's a set package they buy, and they get a set amount of power from that. Local Energy Scotland, it's a movement where Scotland wants to have 500 megawatts of power that is community owned. So it's completely owned by the people. The Agri-Solar Cooperative is Ontario-based farmers who've come together, and they're producing their own power, and they're selling it to Power One. Soul Share Energy, the community-owned energy for BC. Basically, people are investing in bonds, and those bonds then finance solar projects. And then Ontario Sustainable Energy Association, those are 18 projects now that organization has put together and funded, and they're completely managed by a contractor, somewhat like ourselves would be. So the association does the funding, did some of the feasibility and the legwork, and then a contractor has done the full turnkey installations. The other ones that I want to actually just touch on, other communities, and I can tell you some of what they're working on, and it's not the communities themselves, or sorry, the governments themselves, it's the communities. So in the Cowichan Valley, there's a group of investors and solar advocates that are, they're actually in the process of forming their own co-op, and they're in communication with the CVRD to try and lease some land to put up a solar farm. They're trying to swing a deal so that they'll try and get in Bings Creek there at their waste management facility. Sunshine Coast, it will probably be more of a diversified portfolio there. So it's a bunch of investors that want to have solar on lots of buildings spread out rather than one central project. Galiano Island, their goal is actually a 1 megawatt solar farm, one centralized system. So that'll be a fairly large project. And just in the beginning phases, we have Souk starting to come together, and people on the ground wanting to see their own, solar utility selling to BC Hydro.
Doesn't the Souk First Nation have solar on their homes?
Yeah. They actually have solar thermal on several homes. Actually, I think it's 29 homes. And then they have a 2 central systems. So they have a large array right near the water, and then they have another one on, I don't know if it's their band office or something like that. But they have 2 separate PV arrays. So that's all I have for slides. I'd like you guys to ask questions and see where you guys would like to take it.
Councillor Soe?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's kind of a funny subject because Councillor Alberni and myself had a long discussion before this. I must admit I didn't know much about solar panels, but after getting kicked in the right area where my wallet is by BC Hydro this month, it opened my eyes as into what potential is out there, especially for taxpayers. What I need to know is, by purchasing these panels, is there a credit system with BC Hydro, or is it just through a private company?
So what BC Hydro offers, there's a couple offers. One, if you go above 100 kilowatts, which is a large system, then you get into a standing offer program. Anything below that is just called net metering. So if you put 10 panels up on your house, you would have an agreement with BC Hydro. It's called a net metering agreement. Everything that you sell them while say you're at work and it's sunny out and you don't have many loads on in your house, you sell them everything at 9.9 cents a kilowatt hour. So it's kind of an average between the two tiers. Say in the summertime when you go home and you turn things on and you're still generating lots of power, you use everything within your house before you sell anything. And then at night you still have the grid to cover you. It's not like the old days where you had to be completely off-grid.
Okay, because I was asking Councillor Alberni, I guess it was a silly question at the time, but I asked him how many solar panels, if we covered a whole city hall roof, would it be able to sustain our needs for electricity here, saving our taxpayers? I just finished through the audit committee today, and I saw our expense of BC Hydro going up $80,000, and I was totally shocked. But obviously I was wrong. We need more than those type of solar panels to take care of this. But thank you very much for the presentation.
And conservation is always the lowest hanging fruit.
My house is very cold.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So,
Councillor Paulson?
Just being north of the 49th parallel, what are the drawbacks or setbacks for that technology with regards to how far north we are and changing seasons, winter as opposed to summer,
yeah.
Et cetera?
So solar, 49th parallel, we around this area, we actually get more sun than most of Germany. Germany is the largest endorser of solar in the world. China's the largest producer, but in terms of installed capacity, Germany's by far the largest capacity. So in the summertime, that's when we get most of our power. So in the summertime, you'll see your hydro credits grow and grow and grow and grow. And then in the wintertime, when you're using more power, and we call it the wet coast, right? So we'll start to see those credits depreciate, like the credits in the BC Hydro account will decrease. And then at the end of the year, if you have used more power than BC Hydro's billed, they will bill you for the remainder. Or if you've sold more power and you still have a credit after 1 year of having your system up and running, you then get a credit from BC Hydro. So like we have one customer in the Cowichan Valley, he put 192 panels in his fields. And even though it's winter, he's covering most of his loads. And then the summertime, he's just watching the bean counter go up and he's getting excited.
So, Councillor Alberni.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just wondering, your company just does photovoltaics, not solar heating as well?
No, we do. We do. Solar heating and photovoltaics, it's actually come to the price point of photovoltaics has come down to the point that you can generate hot water with photovoltaics for no maintenance, basically, whereas solar hot water, you have pumps, you have glycol, you have all these working parts, and when you add in the maintenance cost, PV is actually cheaper now, whereas 10 years ago, a solar panel that now costs $250 was $1,000, and there was no comparison. But stuff like pools, anything that uses hot water, predominantly in the summertime and year-round, like 7 days a week. Rec centers that have showers, excellent place for solar thermal still.
Thank you.
Yeah, a couple things. You made a comment about how some people are actually taking money out of their RRSPs and putting it into this. Can you transfer from your RRSPs and not have a penalty on it, or is it you pay the penalty but it's worthwhile?
I'm assuming that these people are paying their penalties, okay. But they're still seeing. We've had one of our clients go through crunching the numbers, and they're seeing a return on their system at the cost that we installed it for of almost 9% return on their investment. And they were just like, I can't invest it in what I was investing it for the same returns. So.
Okay, so, but the other thing was, let's say hypothetically the city, we wanted as a city to set up something akin to what Nelson has. Is that the kind of thing that you would help us
yes,
set
absolutely.
up?
Yeah.
Because we have a number of buildings that belong to the city that obviously have flat roofs, so might be a logical place to be putting solar panels, assuming that that the city engineer said, yeah, it makes sense and we can
Yeah.
make it work or what have you. So is that the kind of project that your company would assist with?
Absolutely. We deliver everything from, small systems where cabins, 4 modules and a few batteries to run a cabin, to large commercial and institutional size systems.
And where are you based?
So we're a cooperative. We're actually quite spread out. We've got an engineer down in Souk, an electrician down in Souk, all the way up to Courtney is our furthest north with one of our engineers.
Okay.
So we have several electricians, mechanical contractor, technicians, and 2 engineers.
All right. Council, any other questions for Wes? Well, Wes, thank you so much for your presentation. You've given us a lot to think about. I'm
Thank
sure we will be in touch, wanting to get more information and what ifs answered. So
Definitely.
thank you.
Thank you very much
so
for your time.
Okay. All right, Council. Doesn't appear to be any unfinished business, but we are on to staff reports. The first one is accounts. Councillor Washington, you have a motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the certification of Director of Finance dated February 22nd, 2016 be received in checks numbering 134179 to 134328 inclusive, and payment of accounts totaling $395,206.17 be approved.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. And Council, from the Deputy Fire Chief, we have a report dated February 15th requesting Council direction regarding the removal from service and disposal of Tender 12. Council, we have that report in front of us. Are there questions for Deputy Fire Chief, or Deputy Fire Chief, would you like to come and make a brief presentation to Council?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Welcome, Mr. Patterson.
So, I'll take questions, I think would be the easiest.
Okay. Councillor McClellan?
Yeah, I don't see this as a bad idea if nobody else wishes the truck, but I always like to know, what does it really mean when this is something's reached the end of its life?
Fire apparatus is used as a first out basis in an emergency situation, and when you're getting up into the almost 40 years old, the chances are that it's going to break down in that response time. So in terms of that, it's used up its serviceable life as a fire apparatus. That's a short answer for it, I think.
Okay. Councillor Paulson, did you have a question? No, you didn't. Councillor Washington?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can agree with you. A 38-year-old truck, getting parts for a truck that old is quite a task. Unless it's quite a common part, you'll be out of luck for some of the more exotic parts on that truck. If we go ahead and give it to the Industrial Heritage Society, are we taking off all the bells and whistles and any usable pumps and valves and stuff, or are we just going to give it to them as a...
No, the intent was to remove the portable pumps and the hoses and fittings that we would typically use for wildland firefighting and for the supply. So there would be enough equipment that they would be able to hook up to a fire hydrant if they needed to. But beyond that, the extra usable equipment that we could still maintain at the fire hall would be kept.
All right. Councillor Sobey?
Until I saw the word heritage, I guess that already answered my question, but I was just wondering if with our volunteer fire departments that would be any value to them.
We had asked the 3 local volunteer fire departments if they wished for us to donate that to them, and they indicated that they didn't see the need for it for them.
Okay, but you were last to speak, so Councillor Sauvé, since you're talking about heritage, do you want to make the motion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that the report from the Deputy Fire Chief dated February 15, 2016 be received and Council for the City of Port Alberni direct staff to dispose of Tender 12 to the Western Vancouver Island Industrial Heritage Society for the price of $1.
Seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. Thank you, Deputy Chief.
Thank you.
Good job. It looks almost brand new by the picture.
It's very nice.
Okay, and then you're on again, Deputy Fire Chief, on wildfire protection. We have a report from you also from February 15th. And Council, any questions for the Deputy Fire Chief, or do you have something that you'd like to bring to Council's attention pertaining to your report?
I think everything is in the report that would be necessary. What this will allow us to do is move throughout the summer, if we start into an early fire season, to be able to be there and react quickly. I guess is really the intent of this.
Okay, Councillor Alberni?
Thank you, Deputy. I'm just wondering, I think it's a good idea that we have that agreement in place, but I'm just wondering if the 2014-2015 seasons, whether we've been called out at all, whether that's been used.
In 2014, we billed for $12,000, and for 2015. We were down into the $1,200 range. So it will vary depending on the year and what resources wildfire has within the area.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Sauvé.
Just two questions, Deputy Chief. Number one, for requesting council approval agreement with BC Wildfire Services. This is pertaining to our area, or could it be anywhere in BC?
Well, no, it's for our area at this point.
Because I know in the past we had sent a few members to assist for other wildfires in BC, so that's what I was asking.
That's correct. Yeah, no, this is generally for within the valley area, but potentially outside city limits.
Okay, and if we are overwhelmed with our resources here, this BC Wildfire Service agreement allows others to come and assist us, am I right?
That would be typically done through the emergency plan, and it may allow for us to do that. But the intent of this one was so that we can enter into an agreement with wildfire and contract our firefighters and available resources for the area, as opposed to the other way around.
Thank you.
Deputy Patterson, it does make sense for us to try and get ahead of this a little bit. So congratulations on trying to help us get there. Councillor McClellan, do you want to make that motion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll move that the report from the Deputy Fire Chief dated February 15, 2016 be received. Council of the City of Port Alberni directs staff to negotiate in the best interests of the city with Ministry of Forest, Lands and Natural Resource Operations, BC Wildfire Service, to provide standby coverage and initial attack response assistance during the 2016 fire season, and Mayor and Clerk be authorized to enter into such an agreement.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you, Deputy Chief Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council.
City Clerk, we have a proposal for a lease on property to North Island College.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this is actually a renewal of the lease we have for the North Island College Thiebaud campus. So it does allow for a renewal for another 2-year period. Current rent is $9,193 per month.
Thank you. Councillor Minions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just curious if this amount is similar to what they've been paying, or if it's an increase or decrease.
It does go up, Mr. Mayor, with CPI each year. And the rate that's shown in the current lease includes a 1.3% increase over last year. So it does increase April 1st of each year.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Minions, do you want to make that motion?
That Council for the City of Port Alberni authorize the Mayor and Clerk to enter into a new lease agreement with North Island College for the property at 4751 Thiebaud Avenue for a 2-year period at a cost of $9,193.75 per month, plus applicable taxes, with annual CPI increases effective April 1st, 2016.
Seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. And we have from the Director of Finance a sludge agreement award funding. And the report dated February 15th, 2016, requesting council reconsideration of the February 9th, 2016 resolution regarding funding source for the lagoon desludging contract. Clarification from before. Councillor McClellan, would you like to make that motion? And then, well, it seems appropriate since you were the one who discovered that there may have been a...
Well, yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'm just wondering if we shouldn't make a motion to rescind the last meeting's motion first, and then there's no further thing on the books to borrow and make it cleaner?
I don't know. City Clerk, do we need to do that?
Mr. Mayor, I think it can just be reconsideration. We haven't acted on the motion as yet. So the motion would not be to change who the contract is awarded to, but just where the funding is coming from.
Okay, and so that motion, this motion in front of us does contain the reconsideration piece.
Yes.
So, okay.
So nobody can come back a year from now and say, oh, gee, there was permission here to borrow, so, and people forget again.
I think the City Clerk is comfortable that we're covered.
Okay. Okay, so first of all, then I'll make a motion that the Council City of Port, wrong one. Report from the Director of Finance dated February 15th, 2016, requiring reconsideration of the funding source for award of the lagoon desludging contract be received, and Council City of Port Alberni confirm the award of the contract to Terra Pure Environment for $1,878,073. From the $11.2 million General Strategic Priorities Grant funding received in December 2011.
Is there a seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Any discussion, Council? Councillor McClellan?
Yeah, a couple of things, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to know, I guess, and I know I've had an email with the answer to this, to some of these answers, but not all of them. How much is left in this Strategic Priorities Grant? How much have we spent? And I guess that's a simple subtraction. And what's our share here? Most government grants, they want us to pay a whole bunch, like a third or a half, and what is that?
Okay. City Manager, do you happen to have that information at your fingertips? Because I do remember seeing the email as well, but I can't remember the numbers.
Mr. Mayor, I can summarize from the email. The city received in 2011 a grant from the General Strategic Priority Fund. It's a federal gas tax fund, and received a grant for $11.2 million. And to date, we have claimed and received $876,000 from that. We have $27,000 pending, money that we spent that we haven't claimed back yet. And so there remains a balance of $10.3 million in that fund. So we expend the money, we submit an invoice to UBCM, who's managing that fund, and they reimburse us. So this $1.8 million expenditure will be the same. We'll expend the money, we'll submit to UBCM and get that recovered.
And so then we'd have just under $9 million left?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor McClellan?
Is this the total budget for that project?
Good question. City Manager, do you know?
Mr. Mayor, when this project was envisioned, that was the total budget. As far as we are, our best ability to be aware right now, we're on track to be on budget for that. As we uncover new things, we'll bring those to council. For example, the city engineer will likely be reporting shortly about the outfall, the design and cost of that. So we're developing through this project. The desludging is the next step in the project.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McClellan, you're
Just one more question. I'm just having trouble, I guess, because it seems pretty good deal if they're holding on to this $11 million for us for all this time. Are they going to keep holding on to it for us, or is there a termination date?
Mr. Mayor, I'm not aware of a termination date, but the Director of Finance is confident that the money is available to us through the projected end of project.
okay. Thank you. Councillor Paulson?
This just goes on to continuing on. I think for all the council on this project, it would be really helpful if we had an updated current project budget. and possibly even a cash flow statement to the end of project, or projected cash flow statement, just so we don't have any surprises at the end, and maybe as an educational tool for us as well, where the project's at, where it's headed, and so on.
City Manager?
Mr. Mayor, and I'm mindful that some of this council wasn't on council when this project began and when the grant funds were received in 2011. So staff's already working on a summary report on this project, and included in that will be a step-by-step maybe of the work that's been done and the funding that's been provided. And I think we'll catch council up on where we're at and what we see as the next steps, complete with the funding
Okay,
identification.
thank you. Because for us, for our city, it's a pretty big expenditure. Anything else, Council? All right, then on the motion, all those in favor? Carried. Council, from the Director of Community Services, we have a report dated February 16th on options for McLean Mill Management Board. Welcome, Director Kingston.
Thank you. So at the December 10th special in-camera council meeting, council passed the following resolution: that staff be directed to prepare a report outlining options for the formation of a governing body that would report to the city and assume responsibility for the management of the McLean Mill National Historic Site and Alberni Pacific Railway. Several staff got together and provided before you in the report have 6 options for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McClement?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to first of all thank the Director of Parks and Recreation and the other name I can never remember. Anyway, Community Development.
Community Services.
Services. I'll get there. For the report and the length of it, I guess. But I'd like to make a motion based on some of that report and some of what the committee did earlier. I'd like to move the Council of the City of Port Alberni form a management board comprised of up to 7 volunteers to operate the McLean Mill and Steam Train. The board will report an answer to Council to the Port Alberni Chief CAO.
Okay.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Administrative Officer.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to also thank and I think we do owe a lot of thanks to the people who worked for the last year on the committee, from the Industrial Heritage Society, from the city, from just the general public. And a lot of work has gone into bringing up this idea and others. So I have a couple of other motions to go with us, Mr. Mayor, if this passes.
Okay. I'm just wondering, we should maybe receive the report first and then go with your motion. Not that I have any problems with your motion, but
Oh, I thought we received it. I apologize. I move that we do receive the report.
is there a seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Well, should I make this other motion again, or we remember?
I think we can
Okay.
remember it. Any further discussion on the motion, Council? All those in favor of the motion? Carried. Thank you.
And I have another motion about this, Mr. Mayor, if I may. In fact, 2 of them. I move that the Personnel Committee of Council meet prior to the next regular council meeting to decide on whom to recommend to council for appointment to the board, and at their next regular meeting of council or sooner.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Discussion, Council? Councillor McClement?
Yeah, my personal concern, Mr. Mayor, is that the season is starting, and already, and I really do appreciate the work that Home Hardware has done, and the manager, Jan Laverty, has been out with some of his crew and done a lot of work on some of the buildings in the front area already, not in the heritage part, getting it ready to receive visitors. And we are pretty much going quickly into the season. So if we can have the meeting of council prior to 3 weeks from now, that would be good. If not, we'll probably can live with that.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else, Council? Councillor Sauvé?
One question that I have is pertaining to the selection of this committee. Would it be prudent to have somebody from the Industrial Heritage Society to be attending that meeting, or are we just going to solely leave it to council?
Industrial Heritage Society will be involved.
Thank you. That's all I need to
It would
hear.
make sense to do that.
Yeah, yeah, it wasn't mentioned. That's why I want to
Yeah.
make sure. Thank you.
In fact, if you, the Director Kingston has done a tremendous amount of work on this. And once again, Director Kingston, thank you so much. It's a very in-depth report.
Could I just ask a question?
Yes.
In the report, I've provided 6 different options of what the organizational structure would be. What would the management board be in terms of kind of the reporting relationship? So that's a question that I will have walking away from here in terms of staff looking at it and staff supporting in terms of moving that direction. So board of what in terms of what type of structure here, and I'm sure that you already have, you've seen the report and probably could provide us with direction of what that looks like.
I have a question for you, Councillor McClellan. Did you envision essentially option number 6, reestablishing the management operating board as one of the 6 options? Is that kind of what you were thinking?
No, not reestablishing a management board, Mr. Mayor, no, but starting a new one.
Okay, but are you thinking about some of those similar terms of reference that are outlined
Well,
in
actually,
there?
my next motion is to get a terms of reference.
Oh, I see. Okay, thank you. My apologies. Then back to the motion, moving that the Personnel Committee of Council meet prior to next meeting. Is that where the motion we're at?
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Mayor. And I added on to what I've written to you there, the next regular meeting of the council or sooner, because when I wrote this, I didn't realize we were 3 weeks out.
Okay, thank you. Is there, and it's been seconded?
Mm-hmm.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Okay, carried.
And I just have one more motion, Mr. Mayor. I know I've written more out, but I think that's all for the board when they get formed. I move the Council of the City of Port Alberni ask the City Clerk to prepare terms of reference for the McLean Mill and Train Board, which will include how the board will liaison with the Western Vancouver Island Industrial Heritage Society.
Okay, is there a seconder for this?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Any discussion, Council? Councillor Sauvé, and then the City Manager wishes to clarify something.
Yeah. Personally, I would like to wait till the board has been selected and for them to try and figure out how they're going to be, you know, making these decisions and so forth about the reporting and all that. So I would just hate for council to start inventing the wheel when first let's get the key people involved and let them give us some input as how they would like it to proceed.
Well, normally I would think we'd have a terms of reference established for a committee before we start inviting people to participate in the committee, but Director Kingston, would that normally be the way this would be put together?
In my mind, there's a number of questions in terms of, as I mentioned, the structure of the board and the legal structure of the board. A management board or a board of directors usually comes from something, whether it's being a society, whether it's a corporation or a company. Those are the different options that were laid out there. And what I'm assuming is that the motion for the Personnel Committee to meet, then you would be looking at and deciding what is the legal structure in terms of putting this committee together.
Yeah, I share your concern. There's you want to make sure that it's done in a way that protects the asset and protects the city. That's the whole point of the legal structure. Councillor Alberni.
Yeah, I echo Councillor Sauvé's and the Mayor's concern. We can't put together terms of reference if we don't know what the structure of the board is. You know, are we making a corporation like the forest corporation, or are we doing a society? So I think we need to say that clearly first before we go ahead and make a terms of reference.
Yeah. Sorry, Councillor McClellan, but I just need to get some clarity from Director Kingston. Like I said, you've spent a lot of time thinking about this, and you didn't make a specific recommendation, but it seems to me in reading this that in terms of what Councillor McClellan is talking about, it's of your 6 options, Am I correct in thinking option number 6 is closest to what he's talking about?
I'm not sure, and I wouldn't want to be put in the position of recommending one of these. The task that was given to staff was to go away and look at what are options for creating a management board or whatever you want to call it in terms of oversight of the McLean Mill. As I mentioned in the report, there are some questions that need to be answered in terms of the subsidy that's given to the mill that goes right now. We have a contract with the IHS and provide them. Is that contract going to continue in place, or is that contract going over to this new board? So those are the types of things that will then provide some direction for what type of organization or what type of, in terms of that interface. So if it's a management board in terms of arm's length from the organization, then there's a number of options here that would fit, like the former number 6, the former management board. Or if it's going to be taking on the legal responsibility and the accountability of that funding, then there are other options in here to look at. The difficulty, and I'll say personally for myself going through and doing this, is I have not been involved in the committee. And so, as you can see, the report's quite long because I went through the minutes and took out from the minutes and there where the discussion was. And the task was that you gave us was to come up with options. And so we sat down and looked at a variety of options that we would hope would satisfy council's desire in terms of moving forward. And I know there's a lot in there to look at, and there's a lot of things to consider. That's all I can do is provide you with the information for you then to deal with.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Minions and then Councillor McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just my understanding on what we've done to date, and I might not be maybe completely clear on this, but my understanding was that the new board is essentially going to take over for Industrial Heritage Society, and that our contract would then be with them, and our subsidy would go to them. And reading through your report, I sort of started to question if that is what we completely did or not. So, yeah, maybe just a bit of clarification on that, because that was my understanding of where we were at and where we were sort of headed. But maybe from the motions, that's not the exact direction that we set.
Councillor McClellan.
Yeah, at the meeting in December when we passed the resolution of council, it was to form a management board of volunteers to run it. And at that meeting was the Industrial Heritage Society, the committee, as many as could attend,
right.
The committee of the McLean Mill Committee, and some city staff and city councillors that could make it. Unfortunately, the power was out and it was getting dark, and we did have to go at some point. But there was general agreement that that's basically what Councillor Minion's impression was, that that's what it was. So at that meeting, we passed a motion to form a board. It was quite straightforward, simple. It was the only recommendation that really came out of the work of the committee. There's all kinds of other things that came out to fix this up, fix that up. One of the recommendations is going to be put in when the train and the people run against each other, except to understand Bill Collette might not be one of the runners anymore as he plays too much hockey. But that's why he's not here tonight. But so that's why this motion is there, to get it going. Yes, we need a terms of reference. I believe that, and if we were to do that first, it could take us, I think it could be done coincidentally with forming the committee. The board, pardon me, it's not a committee. It's not like the McLean Mill. It's not a corporation. The city of Port Alberni owns the McLean Mill. The city of Port Alberni owns all of the heritage pieces, or whatever we call them. Okay. So it's ours. And the decision, the recommendation from the committee was that the city form a board of governance or board of managers to operate the mill. And that's what this motion is to do. Okay. And that's what the motion was from the council in December. And we've just passed 2 motions, and if you want to wait on the third one, I'm not hung up, but it just seems to me that all the other, it's not really a committee, so maybe it doesn't need the same kind of terms of reference. Maybe I'm wrong. But I think we should hear from the city clerk and so on and so what should be.
City manager had a point of clarification, and I bet it's something to do with legality.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and you've been tapping my nails, so you've been touching on the things that I wanted to talk about. And I would suggest that if council knows which of the 6 presented models that you're inclined toward, if you point us in that direction, staff's happy to develop terms of reference to bring back to council for your review. You might want to share that with stakeholders as well. But it would help us if you could point us in the direction of, if it's one of those 6, that would help. If it's not one of those 6, a little bit of rounding out about what that terms of reference would look like.
Well, I still come back to, in my mind, and I've been part of these discussions right from day one. Number 6 reads to me like the closest to what we have in mind. And so it was interesting to me, because I didn't know 100% of the background of this, that was the original intent in 2009 to establish this board, and for whatever reason it wasn't as effective as it was hoped it would be, so it was kind of dropped. But it still seems to me, and I think it seems to most of council, that is the most effective model. But legally, we need an entity in place that we can give this money to, grant this money to, that will take responsibility for the money and responsibility for what happens to it and what happens to McLean's Mill, and then would report back to council on a regular basis about progress and the expenditure of public money. Councillor McClellan?
Yeah, number 6, I guess, is the closest, but it wasn't what we had in mind in the recommendation to council.
But it is the closest, and so it's a starting point in which...
But we don't, it's not what we had in mind in the recommendation.
Okay.
The concept is that there be a board formed to manage it, of volunteers, and yes, some of these people should be on it, but there should be, we're looking at more community involvement. We're looking at getting something going, and it's been very frustrating that things can't happen, and it's been a lot of years of I don't want to use the word stagnation, but hard to get things done. And now it seems like there's a new life being breathed into the thing, to the mill and to the train and heritage, including all kinds of things. Yeah. And so I wouldn't want to just leave it to number 6, where we comprise, we got this museum director, executive, looks like the whole executive of the Western Vancouver Island Industrial Heritage. They've basically said they want out. At least that's the information that we got at the committee, and they want the new board to take over. So I'm the manager of McLean Mill, of course, is going to be involved, and so I don't know, that number 6 is exactly what we want. What they had then obviously didn't work, or they didn't put it in.
I'm not, yeah, and I wasn't suggesting that number 6
Well, that's
was
what it sounds to me like you're saying,
yeah.
and that's making me nervous.
No, I think we would be up to council then to clarify the participants in the board, but it still would be...
No, we've already passed those 2 motions, Mr. Mayor, so that's
right.
fine. I mean, and if you want to wait for this one...
okay, well, Director Kingston, we're trying to help with the
Yeah.
creation of this.
Yeah. What we can do is, you've passed the 2 motions.
Yeah.
We can go away and look at, I understand what you're wanting is a board of management of volunteers who've stepped forward and who are doing things at the mill. And what we can do is look at how does that fit in terms of the management board, operating board was a board of the city. Okay, so it reported to the city through the staff structure and the political structure.
Right.
And so that's not needed to create another umbrella in terms of accountability, that it would be that type of structure within the city. So we can go away and work with that and try and include in there the motions that Councillor McClellan made tonight and was passed by council in terms of looking at it. What I wasn't clear of and what I'm hearing now and clarification is that the operating grant would go to this board instead of to McLean Mill.
Right.
And so what staff's going to need to come back with is, because we have a contract with the Industrial Heritage Society. It does have terms in the contract of how we terminate that contract, but it also then needs to look at is how staff reporting too, in terms of the McLean Mill manager, who does he report to, in terms of who he's paid for by, those kinds of things. So there's a number of questions that staff can work on and bring back to council, looking at that particular model as opposed to creating a corporation, as opposed to creating a society, and the other options that were in there.
Yeah, and obviously part of that board, since the Industrial Heritage Society would be part of that, you know, they have to work on a way of sorting out the budget, which portion goes to the Industrial Heritage Society and which portion is used for McLean's Mill, and, you know, the plans.
Right.
Councillor Sauvé and then Councillor McClellan.
I'm in total agreement with what you said, because it would involve many stakeholders and get them involved into the formation of this, and I would like to have more information on this. I would like to hear more from Director Kingston on the issue. So I don't know if we need a motion to have that, to have staff to come back with such a report, but if so, I would make that motion, because I still need to know more about it.
City Clerk, can I ask you a quick question, City Clerk? Do we need a motion to establish for the terms of reference?
That motion is on the floor right now, Mr. Mayor, so it either needs to be withdrawn or put to a vote.
But in your opinion, do we need to proceed with this right now in order to carry on with this, or because I'm sure we are prepared to proceed with it if it helps staff do the job that we need to be done?
I think with what the Director of Community Services is saying, that staff really does need to come back with some more information to council, and I think it's probably advisable to do that first.
Before we pass the motion on the terms of reference?
Yeah.
Okay. If it helps you do your job, then I'm sure Councillor McClellan would be willing to consider withdrawing his motion until afterwards. No, I don't. I shouldn't say I'm sure. I'm wondering if Councillor McClellan would be willing.
I think this motion solves the problem. It's a bit timely out. I accept that, and I knew that when I made it because we're already into the season.
Mm-hmm.
If I withdraw this motion, I don't know what will happen. Sure, staff can come back and give us whatever information they feel we need, but I'm not sure we'll get the terms of reference for the board, and if we don't, I'm not too worried about it. To me, these things can come up and be worked on as time goes by. So as long as we get the board formed by the next council meeting, I guess that's better than what I came here with.
I know that, City Clerk. Yes. City Clerk.
Mr. Mayor, I mean, council can vote on the motion, and if staff is going to bring back a report, we can consider, terms of reference as part of that, and perhaps that might create more questions, or it would certainly be something for council to consider. So I think you can proceed with the motion.
I totally get what Councillor McClellan is saying, which is we don't want to lose the momentum. And it's, it's now slightly more than 2 months since we were given the report and accepted the report, so we'd like to get on with it. Councillor McClellan, are you okay with that? We'll proceed with your.
I'm quite okay with that. And see what happens. If it's up to council. You got one over there who wants to talk.
Yeah, I know.
No, I'd ignore him too.
Councillor Alberni.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Along the city clerk's suggestion, I was wondering whether a way to solve this would be to amend the motion so that it included both preparing a possible terms of reference along with a report on the changes required for staff.
Personally, I can't see both being done. I could only see that we're going to let staff. It's obvious there's more information we need. I need expertise advice coming from the director, and I would just rather leave to that. As for the pressure of forming this committee group, whatever you want, we still have time. You know, the mill is still there. We're still in working process. I rather that we put all the elements together and that we study and we make the right decision. If it takes 2 more weeks, 3 more weeks, so be it. But at least we'll have the bigger picture and we'll be able to make the right decision. That's why I would like to have staff to come back with that report.
Director Kingston, you've heard all of this conversation. Does this help you at all?
So can I just do a quick summary of what
Okay,
I think
go ahead.
has been directed here? Is that in terms of looking at the options that were presented in the report, number 6 comes closest. And not necessarily replicating what was in the past, Councillor McClellan, but looking forward is that it is an internal management board that does not have a legal entity of its own. So it's internal, and its reporting relationship is within the municipal structure. So reporting to council, reporting through to the city, the CAO as well. And that what we're going to prepare for you to do that is look at ways of making it happen in a timely fashion that deals with some of the legal implications of contracts that are existing. And so what would be identifying is some of the terms of reference, is bringing up, it won't have all the answers, but bringing up the questions around reporting relationships and accountabilities for the board. What is their responsibilities, which would be under a terms of reference.
Right. So you can do both of those things.
And it won't be cast in stone. It's going to be bringing up,
Right.
it's where do you give the information that you need to move forward, and that there's clear understandings of accountability and clear understanding of reporting relationships. That's what we'll do.
That's perfect. Okay, so on the motion, all those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Well, it's an important thing. We've been working on it for 14 months, and it's really important. It's cost the city a lot of money in the since 1996, and we want to get it right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Council, congratulations on finishing that important piece of business, and it's now 8:35, and I'm going to call a recess until 8:45. Those are the West Coast ones. Okay, welcome back, Council. And our next report is from the staff report, is from the Economic Development Manager, Mr. Deakin, on our commercial revitalization tax exemption bylaw. So welcome, Mr. Deakin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll plunge into this. First, I need to note that Council's direction to us was to address issue number 1, which is a commercial revitalization tax exemption bylaw for all commercial areas not currently covered by the bylaw. As we took a look at that, we thought that there were 2 other issues that we needed to address. And so the report also does that. I will provide the overview, and Davina and Scott will step in as needed to explain either portions of the bylaw or areas that are covered by it. Okay. So, as mentioned, the 2 bylaws that we've had in the Uptown area have generated some successes. There are some businesses that have taken advantage of them and improved their buildings, and in doing so improved the look of the Uptown a great deal, and ultimately they will provide additional tax revenue for council, and in the interim they're providing a much better looking community, and we presume increasing their business as well. And when council took a look at this, they said we'd like to see it extended to other areas of the city, and so we've prepared a bylaw to do that. You did also express concerns about losing too much tax revenue in the future, so it is a proposal to provide an incentive for the building owner, the property owner, to make some improvements and not be taxed on the increases to the assessment. So it's making sure that there's no disincentive to that individual going forward. So you would, if the money that had been invested in a building had increased its assessment from $500,000 to $700,000, you would forego the taxes, the differential between the $700,000 and the $500,000, but you would continue to get the taxes from the $500,000. So it's a foregone tax. It is an incentive, and it applies to every area, commercial area of the city that is not currently covered, and it provides for a 5-year tax exemption on the differential. There is a minimum threshold of $100,000 proposed.
Okay.
Okay?
So, I like that one. Proceed.
Okay. If there are no questions about that, I will proceed to the second issue, if there are no further questions.
Council, need any clarification?
Okay. Very good. We are recommending an amendment to the existing commercial revitalization tax exemption bylaw. Currently, as it stands, all of the private sector properties in Harbor Key and any city-owned land within the boundaries of the Uptown commercial area are exempted from the incentive. And it was done at the direction of the previous council because that council was persuaded by arguments that The city enjoyed an advantage already in the ownership of the land because it could theoretically sell it at less than market value in order to provide some kind of an incentive for a project. And there was a belief that the private sector properties that are admitted from Harbor Key also enjoyed an advantage in that it was the commercial area where most residents brought their visitors to when they were here in the city, and arguably it was seen as the most desirable area of the city. So we believe that the experience that we've had since putting that bylaw into place is not demonstrating that they hold an advantage by their location, nor is it demonstrating that the city is able to achieve its objective simply with the sale of city-owned lands. So we're recommending that that existing bylaw be amended to include all private properties in Harbor Key and all city-owned properties in the area covered by the bylaw.
Mr. Mayor, is this going to take separate motions, I guess, when we're done?
I think so. I can see at least 2 already.
Probably 3. Go to the next one. Okay, thank you.
Okay, shall I move on?
Yes, please.
So the third actually came up as a result of the business walks that we enjoyed back in October. And what we heard there was that several business owners were thinking about making some facade improvements because they were talking about, they were given an option in the questionnaire, improvements less than $25,000, and several of them chose that option as their response to the question, are you anticipating making any improvements to your building? And it really comes down to painting the storefront or putting a new canopy on it or putting in new windows, putting in a new door, something that would change the look of it, catch the attention of people from the sidewalk or the road, curbside. And we see that there are other municipalities that have adopted a facade improvement program. And they are, normally what they're doing is they're setting a budget. $25,000 a year is a common one, and then they are either doing a first come, first serve proposal for matching funds up to a certain amount of money, $2,500, $5,000, and other councils are putting criteria in place that say what we're really looking for in the first properties that take advantage of this are the ones that are on the corners because they're more visible. So that's an example of a criteria that they would use. So there is currently no funding in the budget for this, where the previous 2 motions do not require any dollars. This one would.
In my mind, the first 2 are quite different because they're to do with taxes. The third one is an incentive.
Yep.
So, council, I think we need to deal with the first 2 first, and then come to that, because it's going to be quite a different discussion, or potentially it's quite a different discussion about the third proposal.
Very good.
So the first motion we need, council, I think, is to receive the report. And then that's brought us in. Councillor McClellan?
Yeah, I would move that we receive the reports.
And I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
And just a question, have you now gone over all your report?
Yes.
Because I noticed some more pieces down below. That's all just attached to the first two motions?
It is.
Okay, so I do have some questions on that when we get to that motion.
Okay, so on the motion to receive the report, any further discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, so then, Councillor McClellan, are you at this point ready to make a motion on the objectives and incentives?
Yeah,
confirmation
I
of
will.
areas
I'll make and I think we'll just, each one of those dots can be a motion, I think.
Right, yeah.
Okay, I move that the objectives and incentives proposed in the draft bylaw and confirmation of areas of eligibility.
So when you say confirmation of the areas, are you referring to all other areas, commercial areas of the city?
All the ones, yes, that were in the, which is pretty much the commercial areas of the city, that's correct. The
Yeah.
map is attached, and I have a seconder, I got a question on part of that.
Okay, it's just,
Second, Mr. Mayor.
and seconded, okay. Just for my own personal clarification, Mr. Deacon, does that include the old BC Tel building on Mallory Drive? Because I believe that may become a commercial opportunity.
Yeah.
You have to go to the actual map. I just don't want to say for sure.
You can read that map?
Not that fast, but,
scary.
you know.
Okay, no, keep going. I'll let you know when you get where we need to be. Nope, keep going. Slow down. Nope, keep going. Okay, hold up. That's Redford. Can you go a little? Need to go towards the top of the map. Okay. Aha. There we are. Oh, crikey.
Jeez.
Yeah, I'm not good at that.
It looks digital. Councillor Alamani, you should be able to handle that just fine.
Not enough ones and zeros, sir.
Yeah.
That was something we can check for sure. It's mostly the commercial areas, like the TELUS building is zoned industrial.
Teleglow.
Oh, Teleglow.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, because that's zoned institutional. So that wouldn't have been something that came up for us.
So it's,
Sorry, I'm sorry. I thought you meant the TELUS building. So the Teleglow building, it's not zoned commercial currently. So
Okay.
it wouldn't have been caught by this.
okay, so we might, if we decide, we may have to have a separate assessment and include it in this at some other time?
Well, certainly, or, I mean, there's a lot of plans and maps, or, a lot of properties are on this bylaw that are attached. So, council may wish, in fair judgment, take some time to think about it, okay? And we could go a bit more back and forth about saying, okay, what's included, what's not included, is that what council wants? Because we did a pretty broad brush, right? All the areas that are zoned commercial and even some light industrial areas up in the Tebow Park area were included on this draft.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you. Councillor Alamani?
Just have a question on if things moved in and out of commercial designation, would they become part of that bylaw then, or?
Not automatically. You'd have to amend the bylaw.
Okay.
Okay, Councillor McClellan?
Yeah, and I'm not sure if this is on this motion or the next one, because it's down in the actual bylaw. Term and calculation of revitalization tax exemption. It's on page 94 of our agenda. And Part C says, with a minimum $1 million investment, the owner is eligible to apply for 100% municipal tax exemption on the assessed value of improvements, buildings, to a maximum 10-year term. The accumulated exemption amount cannot exceed 25% of the total project budget. I do not understand what that means exactly. It's got 100% municipal tax exemption, but it can't exceed 25%. What does that mean?
Okay, did you want to take it, or do you want me to?
I think the first comment, Mr. Mayor, is that that is the current bylaw, so that's the one that's already in place for the uptown area. It's not the proposed, no, that's going to be a separate discussion when we consider adding in the city-owned properties to this particular bylaw. So what we're talking about right now is the draft bylaw. It's got draft stamped on it. That's the existing one.
And so the existing one's more aggressive.
It's very aggressive.
What does it mean then, the existing one?
With 100% of municipal, so we can't exempt taxes for the school or the hospital. So that people who are still paying those taxes, so for the city's taxes, and it's not just on the increased assessment, it's, you're not paying taxes on that property.
But what does 25% of the total project mean?
Well, say you meant if you spent $1 million and you could only recoup $250,000 in foregone taxes. So there's a cap.
Oh, okay. So actual tax not paid.
Yes.
Okay. Why don't you just say that?
But that's the existing one for
Yes.
specified, and what we're talking about with this motion is for the rest of the commercial areas in the city.
That's fine, then I'm happy with that.
Okay. Any other clarification needed? Okay, so then, City Clerk, could you just read back the motion for us, please?
The motion at this time, Mr. Mayor, is that the objectives and incentives proposed in the draft bylaw and that Council confirm the areas of eligibility as presented.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, Council? So then on that motion, all those in favor? Carried, thank you. Then we have a second potential one. How are you doing, Councillor McClellan? Or you want to
I think we'll take a crack at it and word it a bit differently. I move that we accept the recommendations for the amendment to the current CRTEB to include all private properties in Harbor Key and city-owned properties in the area covered by the bylaw as eligible properties.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Council, you need clarification on anything? Okay, Councillor Alberni?
So just to be clear, this is the existing bylaw that we're now applying to city properties as well.
So on the map above, this would be an amended map to the existing bylaw. So in the current bylaw, Harbor Key and some key city properties are not included. So we would make an amendment would come forward to council that would essentially add those properties to the existing bylaw. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. On the motion then, all those in favor of the motion? Carried. Okay, so now we're on to the third part, which is the proposed facade improvement. And there are two parts to the suggestion, am I right, Mr. Deacon, that firstly, whether or not we accept the concept, and secondly, whether or not we should be putting money in to support it or to incentivize it?
Right.
And if so, how much?
We'd appreciate that direction.
And you suggested anywhere from 10 to 25,000, but if we wanted to put in $1 million, we could do that, or if we wanted to put in, less than that.
Absolutely.
All right, Councillor Minions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very excited that we are talking about this type of tax exemption, or not tax exemption, but I think this is a really good step. And one thing that was very clear when I did business walks, it was in the uptown area in Harbor Key, and over and over again, we heard that people wanted to do facade improvements. So I think this is going to be something that we could get a lot of uptake on and really see a drastic difference. My thought when I read through this was that $25,000 was low. I'd like to see, especially in the first year of the program, it would be nice if we could carry it over, but I'd like to see a good difference so that people can actually feel the difference that the program made. And I think to do that, we have to offer a little bit more to get more uptake and affect more businesses. My thought was $50,000, but I'll listen to what council feels. I'll move that we do $50,000 for the first year of the program. And I also think that in the first year, I would really like to see, I don't know about other specifics, but I'd like to see it specific to main streets like Lower Johnston, Lower Argyle, and 3rd Avenue, so that we're getting the biggest effect from that money spent. Open it up to other.
So you're seconding it, Councillor McClement? Okay, so discussion. Councillor Paulson?
Just like to reiterate, just to confirm, basically this project would be a first come, first served. People would be in a orderly fashion, and that you provide matching funds up to $5,000 per project. Does that make sense?
Well, it does, but to me it makes even more sense if we set aside the $50,000 in the budget and we say to these guys, you come up with how the businesses could access it, and we can look at that and approve it. You know, you're the ones who do the thinking on a regular basis about how to make these happen.
Yep.
If we can put the money aside in the budget, then
I'll just leave that as a
can come
comment,
up with a program.
not part of the motion.
Mr. Mayor, if I may respond, the advantage of first come is that you get the applications coming in right away. People are keen. Those that have been thinking about it obviously move forward. You don't necessarily get the impact that you're looking for if you're saying we wanted to apply to Lower Johnson Road, Lower Argyle, you know, those areas. And again, as I mentioned, you know, some communities have focused on corner properties because of the bigger impact, but we can lay those out, bring them back for consideration.
I think Councillor Minions, in terms of, from her comments, is clear that she wants something to happen, and she wants it to happen as quickly as possible. But really, the two of you can come up with ways that businesses can access that for the greatest impact for the community, I would think.
Yep, we can do that.
Councillor McClement?
Yeah, I would just like to encourage the Lower Johnson, 3rd Avenue, and Lower Argyle as the places to start. You get a bigger bang if they come out there and get going. If nobody comes forward from there, I guess get the best we can. But Johnson Road is where everybody goes down. That's a facade, and maybe some of that could be used on streetscapes. Although that would have to be an agreement for the whole block, wanting the same streetscape. But with the facade and streetscape together, there would be some very good, have a lot of good improvements and make the place look a lot better, because it looks like we're getting another empty store in Upper 3rd, and it would be nice if it looked okay.
Councillor Sobey, and then Councillor Alemany.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is improvement of facades. Would the city have any criterias as what the definition of facade is? And obviously observing our bylaws as into and all that. So I have concerns about that.
I bet you.
The facade is normally very well defined, and there are many other communities that have moved ahead. So we will be able to know what difficulties or what challenges they've experienced in actually implementing the program. And we have taken a look at some of the facade improvement programs that are in place, and we've got a good sense of what's working and what's not. There was, I should say, a bylaw adopted by the city in the mid, I think it was somewhere around 2008 or 9, called the Save Our City bylaw. It was proposed by students at ADSS, and it did propose a color theme and suggest that businesses take a look at that theme. The feedback that we had from merchants in particular, and business owners to a lesser degree, was that the colors were unfortunately pretty bland. They didn't pop out at you. While they gave the area a very harmonious look, it didn't pop out. So you will have seen that some of the businesses, and the bylaw is no longer in existence, so some of the businesses have chosen to go with brighter colors.
Okay. Councillor Alberni?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess a couple concerns. One, so this is not like the form and character stuff that was in the budget process.
No,
This is separate from that.
This is kind of like, as the economic development manager said, and it's kind of a stopgap between the tax revitalization one, where they're trying to do an improvement to the outside of their front of their building. It's not going to meet the thresholds where an increased assessed value is. It's giving them a bit of, it's a program that the city would work with them to do improvements to that. Most of them would not require a building permit, would not require a development permit because of the scope of the project. And the details of the program, you know, as council is, you know, we'd still have to work out. This was just an initial threshold to see whether city council is, you know, wanted to consider such a program. Other municipalities are doing things that have had some success, so we wanted council to at least consider it.
Good, thank you. My other one then is just looking ahead to the next item on the agenda, actually, with the Sprout program. I'm wondering whether, I don't know council's thoughts ahead of time, I can't predict, but you know, if we're doing $50,000 for this, I would approve on having the Sprout program as well, which would be another, I believe it's $20,000 is what the recommendations is. So I was thinking in my head 25 for this and 20 for that, and that would come out pretty nicely, but I don't know if 75 would sound so great. So I don't know whether I can go for 50, only because you know, we have a budget meeting next week or tomorrow. That's going to be adding a whole bunch of other stuff. So I don't know. I'm a little worried on the $50,000 number, just because we have lots of other things coming up, and I would like to see both improvements on the outside and on the inside. And I think the Sprout program would do the inside part. So that's where my head is at right now.
Okay. Councillor McClement?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with the motion, Mr. Mayor, as it is. With the next subject, I'd like to see that worded a bit different, and I think there's ways of mitigating that and still getting what we need.
Okay. City Clerk, can you just read the motion for us, please?
Mr. Mayor, the motion is that council allocate $50,000 for the first year of a facade improvement program specific to main streets, which includes 3rd Avenue, Lower Johnson, and Argyle Street.
Okay, thank you. All right, you're satisfied with that? Okay, on the motion then, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. So does that help you, Mr. Deacon?
It does indeed.
Does
Thank
that
you very much.
cover off everything?
Yes.
And now we want all the facades fixed up by the end of next month, okay? You're in charge.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Deacon.
Yeah.
And now we're on to Sprout, the Sprout program. So there are a number of proposed motions, a couple of proposed motions for us. And we don't have to do them in the order that they are proposed. Council wish any clarification on the Sprout program, or do you think you understand the program well enough? Okay, seeing no clarification, no need for clarification, I suspect we already know. Councillor McClement?
Yeah, the Sprout program, as I understand it, is using a smaller footprint on buildings, which can cause a little bit of confusion, I think, with our bylaws and with all kinds of things. So maybe you could just explain what is wanted here. And I notice in the motion that you're considering giving Kevin Wright an amount of money up to $20,000 to do this, and that part of it I got a little bit of question on. And I'd like to see that change. I'd like to see something else happen there. And in fact, I'm not going to make a motion just right now, but well, maybe I could. But I would like to see it a lot less than that for any little bit of work that he may do, because he's done a lot of work on the subject. But I would rather see, if we're going to pay for anything, that pay per sprout business started up. Like I would rather see something like was suggested to me by others. Actually, it was not my original thought, so I can't take credit for it. But give Mr. Wright something in the neighborhood of $5,000, and $1,000 for every business that he brings in. Just putting out a blanket 20 is doesn't seem to be doing it for me. But that's just mine, and I'll be quiet for a minute, let other councillors talk.
And council, for me, if we make a motion to have a specific name of an individual in a motion doesn't sit very well with me. I just as soon not put that name into the motion. I don't, I think we can leave it with Mr. Deacon to make his own arrangements rather than us name a specific individual in that city motion, or the council motion, sorry.
Mr. Mayor, I must say that I did include a specific name in there for contract within the recommendation, simply because the individual involved has spent an enormous amount of time in thinking about this and putting it forward.
Yeah, I understand that, but I think we can leave that to your good judgment to make the decision about who it should go to. Sorry, Councillor Sauvé.
Mr. Deacon, if you could explain to me exactly what that $20,000 of our taxpayers' money is actually going to be giving us. Because I know we've been studying the Sprout projects since the beginning of the election and all that, and we are well versed as in what to do. It makes sense. We got vacant businesses that the square footage nobody can afford to rent, so making it smaller would make it more accessible, especially for young entrepreneurs and all that. But what would the $20,000 be for? Is it a study that we've already seen?
No. So, if I may, Mr. Mayor, there are more empty storefronts in the community than any of us want to see. It's an issue that we've been aware of for several years, and there are many different ways that other communities have addressed or attempted to address the program. What is proposed here is a way of cutting down on the square footage that an individual would have to bring up to fire code and building code in order to get into business. It's also would give the city a more vibrant look in terms of storefronts being occupied. It would give the building owner some revenue, and it would allow us to see whether a business that we had thought might work in that area would indeed work, or if there was a complementary business that could work there. So the deliverables would include pretty much as I've outlined at the top of the second page of the report there. Some of this has been done or partly done, but it isn't completely done. So identify all of the owners of the buildings with empty storefronts, getting in touch with them, determining who would be willing to participate in the initiative, calculating the probable financial benefit of participating in it for the owner of the building, calculating the cost for an individual who's looking at a particular building for doing that, identifying the best business fit to the space. All of the buildings are in a commercial zone, but as the fire marshal and the building inspector are fond of letting me know, not all businesses work in that zoning, or they all work in the zoning, but they don't all work in a particular building in that zoning, and that there are other steps that would have to be taken in order to make sure that we had the right business shoehorned into the right building, letting people know about the program by perhaps painting on the storefront windows or putting a poster up indicating what would work there, and creating brochures and videos to advertise the opportunity not only to the community here but to others about its availability. And so those are some of the things that would be done. And as the motion, the first motion that's on the paper stands, really the question is, council, are you willing to move forward in addressing this issue of empty storefronts? If so, do you think this is the right way of going? Would you rather task the economic development assistant or give us the latitude to hire a contractor, and if hiring a contractor, identifying the scope of the work that would be done and the deliverables, and it would be ironclad in doing that.
So part of the promoting and the advertising and all that would be part of that $20,000?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Alemany, then Councillor Paulson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So my understanding is we're basically we're hiring an individual for a year. Is it a year, or is there a time limit to it?
Yeah.
So we're hiring an individual to take this program forward. I can't see it. I can't see any individual doing that kind of work for anything less than this amount, honestly. If they're dedicating, as much resources as what the report would stand. So, I guess I'll make the motion that the report for the Economic Development Manager dated February 17, 2016 be received, and Council for the City of Port Alberni direct the EDM to negotiate the scope and deliverables for a Sprout program and the contract for implementing it with a contractor for an amount not exceeding $20,000.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Paulson?
Once again, I have a hard time with the $20,000. And for me, once again, this comes from private business background and stuff, I would rather see this as a result-oriented type contract. And the base amount, I would leave that up to the Economic Development Manager at $5,000, $10,000. And number 11 in your thing here is celebrating successes. Mm-hmm. And I think the successes could be celebrated with a commission basis or a bonus of perhaps $1,000 per business that was actually signed up and done. The second part of this is it gives me a measurable. If I just give $20,000, I don't have a measurable. But if you go on a bonus basis and we can actually tally and keep track of numbers, so that's my feeling on it. I don't think I can support the motion as it reads.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McClement and then Councillor Sauvé.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Paulson that I'd like to see some results, and I want to get to that celebration quick, and possibly my concept that I was thinking of $5,000 and $1,000 per startup might not be the right numbers, but maybe I'd like to hear from you first, Pat, and what you think about that, if that is feasible, and if so, I would make that as the motion. I don't think it would make a amendment. We'd have to change the motion.
Well, as I indicated, I'm more than prepared to negotiate both the scope and the deliverables. I think it's an idea well worth pursuing. So, and I really would like to see us address the empty storefronts, and there are just too many other things on the plate that stop us from getting to that place. So that's why I like the idea of going to a contract basis, and certainly willing to give that a go.
You also have another part there, potentially going after some other funding. Okay, sorry. Councillor Sauvé, then Councillor Minions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's been a long time. The public is not asking, but actually insisting we get something done with these empty storefronts. We finally had an idea and a program that came up, and there's a money offer as into contracting, which I think is a very smart idea, because I'm comparing this to staff time having to do it. It'd be much more than $20,000, and I'm looking at any certain consultants that start at least at $60,000. You actually have a resident that wishes to invest his specialty in promoting this, and after hearing what is including in that $20,000, it only makes sense that we would take advantage of this opportunity. And I've never met anybody more enthusiastic as Mr. Wright into bettering the uptown and hoping to work through Port Alberni. So to me, it's a gift, and I would just hate to neglect that. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Minions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's not a matter of whether or not we want to address the issue or not address the issue. And it sounds like we're fairly in agreement that we should be hiring a contractor for this. I think this is a really good way to go. I would like to see the option of it being on some sort of commission basis explored. But I wonder if that could just be a friendly amendment to, $20,000, but maybe we just add on to the end of it, exploring the option of commission basis, or that being a part of the negotiations. It doesn't sound like we are really debating whether or not to move forward with a contract. It's just maybe how it will be paid out. I personally think people work harder when they're motivated by commission, so I'd like to see that explored.
I think actually in the motion it's already there. The opportunity is already there because it says negotiate the scope and deliverables for a Sprout program and contract for implementing it. So if we pass this motion, we would be giving economic development manager that flexibility to do that. Councillor Alberni?
I don't really see any problem with that. It already says not exceeding $20,000.
Yeah.
It's not at $20,000. So.
Yeah. Councillor McClellan.
If he brings in 30 little businesses, I don't mind it going up to 30,000. But, and to me, there should be an incentive. He's definitely got energy. And if it can work, let's see some deliverables. And we get 30 businesses in here, I'll be quite happy to come back and put that up.
Okay, I think we've got enough for a vote on this, so I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Carried. And there is a second part to that, which is encouraging the EDM. But, honestly, Mr. Deacon, do you really need a motion in order to do that? You're really competent at doing that sort of thing, and I know you're going to do it anyway. So,
Mr. Mayor, it's really only in there because I have noticed that the regional district looks for motions from their board before pursuing particular grants. So I thought I'd include it, but no, we don't really need it. Yeah. We'll get on with it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Much appreciated.
Okay, thank you. All right, Council, we have next item is our status report. Any questions on the status report, Council? Councillor McClellan?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, number 2. Just wondering where we are with that. I know it's been a while, and so I was wondering where that is, and if the answer isn't now, maybe it could go on from the agenda of the next meeting. Number 11, to see where we are with the RCMP. I know it's a low thing, but it's been there a while. Maybe we should take it off, decide it's done or not. And number 12 is something that I've been pushing for, and I think there's ways within this budget we can get some of that done. Outside advertising we have to do for Port Alberni, where I don't believe it's done enough, and I think we had a few suggestions during the budget presentations, and we can talk about that again tomorrow. But I just wondered if anything else has happened with that.
Okay, I'm not sure. City Manager, are you able to respond to any of that?
Mr. Mayor, first, council may not be aware that we are scheduling a meeting, public meeting with all of council and senior staff to go over the entire status report document and reassign timelines and priorities. So that is to come shortly.
And that's by department, right?
That's correct.
Thank you.
So we're looking at number 2 first.
If you don't know the answer yet, I'm not.
Sure, the city clerk can help us with number 2.
There's a very good answer, Mr. Mayor. That's there's a significant amount of work still to be done there. We have not had an opportunity to look at that. The city planner and myself have not progressed with that issue as yet.
And we keep dumping more stuff on your plate, so.
Yes.
All right. Thank
Mr.
you.
Mayor, number 11, if I can,
Yes.
I believe there's a report coming to council at the next budget meeting, I believe, on that issue, which is tomorrow.
Okay.
And on the RCMP member issue. And number 12, I would ask the Economic Development Manager to comment on that.
Pleased to say that with some items moving off the plate, like the commercial revitalization tax exemption bylaw, which will fall squarely on Davina, I'll turn my attention to number 12 now.
Okay.
We'll
Thank
have
you.
a motion for you tomorrow.
Okay.
Anything else, Council? All right, then, Councillor Washington, do you want to move acceptance of the, or receipt of the current status report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the current status report be received.
And I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, all in favor? Carried. Okay, under Manager's Monthly Reports, we have from the RCMP Department, any items, Council, that you wish to tease out? Seeing none, then Councillor Sobey, do you want to move a receipt of that report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, that the monthly report from the RCMP providing information about current departmental operations be received.
Is there a seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. And from Community Services, Parks, Recreation, and Heritage, anything that we need highlighted, Director, or from Council, any questions?
It's a longer report because you didn't receive one in December and January. And I do want to note that 2 of the status report items are addressed in this report as well.
Oh, thank you. Could you highlight them for us, please?
One was about food plants and city planting beds. And after discussion with our Parks Operations folks is recommending that we not do that at this time. There is issues with the planters that would make it unhealthy in terms of people eating the food from the planters. Instead, what we'll be doing is putting some hanging baskets in front of City Hall that do have food items in them.
Okay.
Okay.
Such as strawberries or something?
Yeah, whatever the gardener seems as appropriate. And then the other one was a status report item regarding the signage on the Scott Kenny Trail. And so I've included in there the kiosks that have been done to date and the ones that will be put in this summer and the trail markings. So on that. And then a variety of other items from the department, different aspects of the department. And I'd be pleased to answer any questions.
Thank you. Council, any questions? Okay, then Councillor Washington, do you want to move receipt of that report?
I move that the monthly report from the Community Services Director providing information about current departmental operations be received.
Is there a seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. And from Economic Development, Mr. Deacon, fill up a chair. Council, anything that you wish teased out of this report? Councillor McClellan?
Yeah, just maybe a Islands Agricultural Show. We're going to get that here next year. I went down last weekend to Cowichan and enjoyed their farmers market, which seems to be booming a whole slug well. And we're getting it up here, and I hope we'll be able to attract as many people as they could. And thank you to Pat for the work he's doing with some of the regional district people.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to thank Councillor McClellan for, I think he has volunteered at pretty much every one of the Island Agriculture shows since its inception 5 years ago. So thanks for that.
Yeah. It takes a lot of energy to pull all that together. How's the committee coming?
Good. We've already had a debrief, and we're determined to show the rest of the island how it's done Port Alberni style.
Go big or go home.
Yeah.
Well,
we are going to be asking the seafood producers from the coast to take part in the show. That will be a first for the show. We are aware of this Seedy Saturday, which takes place in Cowichan on the first Saturday of every February, is on the second day of our show. So we're going to be looking to see if we can bring a few of their speakers up for the Friday here. And we believe that we've got as good an opportunity as Cowichan with their facilities, and as the Comox Valley with, if we pull in from other communities on central Vancouver Island to make sure that the food, the wine and beer and food at the opening reception is represented well.
all right. So anything else, Council? Councillor Washington?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kudos to Haven Marina. I see the RFP closes on the 26th. Have we got any concrete proposals yet?
I am expecting two proposals, and I think each of them will stop short of completely fulfilling the terms of the RFP, but each of them will hold enough promise for us to continue to pursue.
All right. Anything else, Council? Okay. Councillor Paulson, do you want to move receipt of that report?
That the monthly report from the Economic Development Manager providing information about current departmental operations be received.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I don't know if this would be a good opportunity, and it's not on the manager's monthly report, but I just had a question on a status to the city planner, if I may ask him a question,
Okay.
if you don't mind.
It's kind of an unusual piece.
Well, it's a bit relevant, Mr. Mayor, to what we're trying to accomplish tonight with arranging with facades of our community and making our community more beautiful. And if it wasn't for the last month of getting bombarded with emails, and I know past council and this council at the beginning, we're talking about the issue of derelict buildings. And I just need to know, so I could answer these people, that we are actually certain status report, as in we're paying attention to that, we're not forgetting about it, we're dealing with absentees, landlords and so forth for these derelict buildings?
Certainly, those are some things that, you know, are clearly on our bylaw enforcement list. If there's specific things that you want direct towards me, I can look into them for you.
Okay.
Councillor Sauvé, I do believe that the city engineer is working on a proposal to bring to council at a future council meeting, not very far in the future. So
Okay.
it is in the works.
I'll pass on to my constituents. Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, City
Planner.
Planner. Sorry to put you on the spot that way. Okay, there are no bylaws and correspondence for action. From Evergreen Exhibitions, we have a letter dated February 4th, 2016, requesting permission to suspend a banner across 10th Avenue near Echo Center from March 7th to 13th to promote the annual Spring Home Show at Glenwood Sports Center on March the 12th and 13th, 2016. Councillor McClellan, would you like to make that motion, please?
And a letter dated February the 4th, from Evergreen Exhibitions Limited, requesting permission to suspend a banner across 10th Avenue near Echo from March the 7th to 13th, 2016, to promote the annual Spring Home Show to be held March 12th and 13th, 2016 at Glenwood Sports Center, be received and the request approved.
Is there a seconder? Second, Mr. Mayor. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. And an email from the young professionals of the Alberni Valley concerning a grant application to purchase and plant nut-producing trees. Councillor Minions, would you like to make that motion?
That the email dated February 9th, 2016, from Jeanette Cormier requesting a letter of support to accompany their grant application to purchase and plant nut-producing trees on the Dry Creek Community Garden site be received, and a letter of support provided as requested.
Any discussion? Councillor Alamani?
I just wanted to note that I think it was 2008 or 2009, a citizen came forward and proposed planting fruit and nut trees, although I think he focused on nut trees on city boulevards or whenever the city was looking at replacing trees. So this would be, I think, a great way to sort of test that theory out. And I think the main opposition last time around was attracting bears and that sort of thing. So I'd like to see how that works out. I think it'll probably be just fine.
Okay, on the motion, all those in favor? Carried. And from the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District, we have a letter inviting council to meet. Councillor McClellan, would you like to make that motion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, there's a letter dated February the 15th, 2016, inviting council to meet with the ACRD Board of Directors to discuss pursuing shared service agreements and regional services we received, and the staff director to arrange a mutually acceptable meeting date.
Is there a seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. And from the City of Port Coquitlam, we have a letter seeking endorsement for a resolution for the FCM, requesting support for a particular amendment. Councillor Sauvé, would you like to make that motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That council of the City of Port Alberni endorsed the City of Port Coquitlam resolution to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities to amend the Build Canada grant funding program to increase funding contributions for significant projects from the federal and provincial government.
Is there a seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And from Mr. Roland Smith, we have a letter regarding the management structure review and decisions and costs. Councillor Washington, would you like to move to receive that letter?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, that the letter dated February 16th, 2016 regarding the management structure review and requesting information regarding the effect on the city's budget resulting from the decisions be received.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. And from Charlene Patterson, the Solstice Arts Festival, a letter requesting temporary street closures. Councillor Alberni, would you like to make that first motion?
Yes, that the letter dated February 17, 2016, requesting a temporary street closure for the Solstice Arts Festival on Argyle Street between 4th and 5th Avenues from Friday, June 17th through Monday, June 20th, 2016 be received and approved in principle, subject to notification to local businesses and residents, the provision of standard liability insurance and pertinent information being provided to the RCMP, Fire Department, and BC Ambulance.
Is there a seconder?
I'll second it, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. And you're on a roll there, Councillor Alberni.
That the request for provision of tents and barriers be referred to the Director of Community Services to review eligibility for Community Investment Program.
Is there a seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. You waited a long time for that one. All right. City Clerk, there are no proclamations, but we do have some informational correspondence.
A few items, Mr. Mayor. Seniors Advisory Committee provides the minutes of their October 8th and January 14th meetings. McLean Mill Advisory Committee minutes of the November 19th and February 4th meetings. A letter from Diane Maba expressing concern regarding the Alberni Valley Museum changing to a non-profit organization. A letter from Roberta Jensen expressing the same concern. Air Quality Council minutes of the January 28th meeting. A letter from BC Game Society inviting bids to host the 2020 Winter Summer Games or the 2022 Winter Summer Games. Wilderness Committee enclosing their latest educational report, cleaning up BC's dirty mining industry. Food Security and Climate Disruption Committee, minutes of December 3rd and January 5th meetings. Youth Advisory Committee, minutes of their October 20th meeting. Alberni District Secondary School Life Skills Program, letters from the teacher and the students thanking Council for their donation of bus passes for their excursion through the on the bus system through the Community Investment Program. And lastly, a summary from Councillor Ron Paulson of his experience at the Truck Loggers Association annual conference and trade show in Vancouver in January.
All right. And since you're mentioned last, Councillor Paulson, do you want to move receipt of these?
Last but not least, right?
Last but not least. Never least.
That informational correspondence items numbered 1 through 11 be received and filed.
Seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. And we have a report from in camera, and the report concerns the acquisition of the former Esso fuel property on Harbour Road. Council for the City of Port Alberni is pleased to announce that the city is purchasing the former Esso fuel station property at 3000 Harbour Road. The property is adjacent to the city-owned properties at Harbour Quay and the Port Alberni Port Authority's Harbour Quay Marina. The property purchase supports Council's strategic priorities regarding waterfront redevelopment and public waterfront access. In addition, this property was specifically targeted in the 2007 Port Alberni Uptown and Waterfront Redevelopment Study. We are continually looking for opportunities to improve the accessibility to our waterfront, particularly in prime locations such as Harbour Quay. The city can now consider a number of options to enhance waterfront tourism, recreation, and public use. The city is purchasing the property from Imperial Oil for $209,000 effective March 23, 2016, with funding from the Land Sale Reserve. A certificate of compliance from the Ministry of Environment has been received. It is increasingly important to secure valuable waterfront properties to ensure we are an attractive place for citizens to live and a popular destination for tourists. With highly valued amenities situated on both sides of this property, we have a great opportunity to create a physical connection that complements the entire area. Development plans are yet to be determined. In the meantime, the city will ensure the property is safe and well maintained. So there you go. Now, we are on to council reports, and the first one is from me. Of course, we've all been involved in budget. I also had the pleasure, council, of being able to given the opportunity to address grade 9 students at ADSS who were involved in the Junior Achievement Program, where they had an opportunity to learn about their future decisions and the economy. We had a meeting with Environment Canada to learn about species at risk in this area. And today I had a conversation with Emmett Shinbat, who's a director for Immigration Canada. And he was delighted that we, as a city, have expressed interest in supporting refugees coming to our city. And he let me know that we have a number that will be arriving soon, quite a few of them that would may be a nice fit for Port Alberni. Many of them are farmers or interested in farming. So for us as a community, we have lots of arable land, and we're looking for people to do something with that land. And council, that's my report, and I move acceptance of my report.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. And from the Regional District, Councillor McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The last regional district meeting was a couple of weeks back, and I have another one coming up in 2 days. It sort of seems like we get our reports out a little bit later, but that's fine. It'll change as the calendar changes later. The main item of business affecting the Alberni Valley in the last board meeting was the runway extension for the Alberni Valley Regional Airport. And the motion passed, and it was one of those motions that the director of, or not the director, but the CAO of the regional district was talking about, where each director gets so many votes based on population. And it passed to go ahead and extend the runway as per the schedule brought out by the consultant, who incidentally has a very good track record on airports. So I think we're getting a lot of good expertise to go ahead with our airport. And that's about it for the report, Mr. Mayor. There was a lot of other things talked about, but mostly zoning and so on.
Want to move acceptance of your report?
I move acceptance of that report.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. And Councillor Washington, do you want to begin the councillors' reports, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you mentioned, budget presentations and meetings. February 11th was the West Island Wilderness Advisory Group. Our guest speaker was Marissa Holloway. She's a field planner from Western Forest Products, and she gave us a presentation on BEC, which is the Biogeoclimate Ecosystem Classification. So rather than explain that tonight, if you go on Ministry of Forest and type in BEC, you'll get a full idea of what that all is. It's with climate change and everything else happening in this world today. February 20th, Rotary Club annual fundraiser, their Mardi Gras banquet to benefit Literacy Port Alberni. Thank all the merchants who helped donate to that, and a special thanks, I think, to the Scotiabank, who are going to match them up to $5,000, dollar for dollar, for the money they raised on their show on Saturday night. And lastly, just to the audit committee meeting today, thanks for the councillors for sticking around, and thanks to our city staff for putting their input in. And that's my report.
Thank you. Councillor Alberni.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just do, we had a APC meeting, Advisory Planning Commission meeting on Thursday. There wasn't a whole lot of business done, but there was many new members for this year that came onto the board. Our new chair is Wes Hewitt, and the vice chair is Siva Dhaliwal. So that's good. So we'll have more to chew on, I'm sure, for the next meeting. And then of course we had the audit committee meeting today. And one other thing, I guess the community came out on the radio, I think today, that unfortunately the family of refugees that were going to come into town were denied at the last minute. So they'll be our committee will be waiting for a new family to be assigned to them in the next few weeks. So they still have everything ready to go, and hopefully that'll happen sooner rather than later.
Okay. Councillor Minions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I attended the public budget meeting. I thought it was a great meeting. Not a lot of public, unfortunately, but some great discussion and good feedback. We had a branding committee meeting. We had some really good discussion around what the best direction for moving forward is and what we want our goals to be at the end of the day. We had a policy conference call with the BC Chamber talking about different projects that they want to work on moving forward. And I attended a new group that's been formed called the Community Integration Stakeholders Working Group, where they're working on creating sort of an integrated response and support team for people who are considered at risk, including seniors, people with mental health and addiction issues. So it was we've had a couple of meetings, but it was a really good one where we actually reviewed sort of a plan that's been formed and steps to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Paulson.
Try and keep it brief here. We're closing in on 10. Public budget presentation, again, attended that evening, and once again, great input. Once again, it was too bad it wasn't greater attended. We had two meetings with the Social Housing Retrofit Committee, one of which was with the BC Housing District Manager, and lots of great information, and hopefully we can move that project forward. Attended the Bulldogs Banquet and Auction fundraiser. And once again, I want to just really thank people in the community, how generous they are, all the supporters, sponsors, alumni that donated things for the live and silent auction. And just a matter of interest, the Connor McDavid signed jersey sold for $5,000 that night. Wow. Mm-hmm. And met with Environment Canada staff on the species at risk presentation, and just a couple of things. 85 species within BC are identified, 18 species, terrestrial species in our own area. So including some bats and stuff. So very interesting, and yeah, that's all I have.
Thank you. Councillor Sobe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the 10th of February, a public meeting. Unfortunately, I feel that I want to thank the staff, first of all, for attending, but I think they outnumbered the residents. But I thank the staff for being there and assisting the 14 residents that did show up. On the 11th, we had the Seniors Advisory Committee. Our chair was sick, but there was discussion. We had some members from the public there, discussion about complaints about loved ones who have left their residence and placed in assisted living, but being separated, and it's becoming an ongoing issue. So it's something we'll be working on, and we're looking forward to what's going to be the outcome of our budget that the request was made. On the 17th, I attended a couple of meetings, the Pulse on Biking at the Echo Center, about the bike lanes and so forth, and that was interesting. Gave me a better outlook as into decision-making, how I felt about things. Also, right next door, I ran, and there was the Heritage Society annual meeting, which was very interesting. There's two new directors that have been acclaimed. They're Sterling Stump and Rod Glenwill. Hopefully I said that right. Apologies if I didn't. There's also, speaking of that, they're looking for volunteers at the train station. So anybody wishing to volunteer, please just bring up your names, and I guess they could come and see people at the Parks and Recs and figure that out. Fir Park Village, part of the Continuing Care Society, they're having their silent auction that's been extended. They got new dining room tables and chairs. They're trying to get rid of the old ones. It's very good piece of furniture, so they're having their silent auction. And also, again, I'm repeating myself, they're looking for volunteers with Class 4 for driving around with the seniors on the bus. And that's about it for my report, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor McClement? We're beyond 10 o'clock. Do you want to move?
Not there yet, Mr. Mayor. It's not 10 yet.
Don't follow that clock.
Okay.
Okay, I won't bother to report.
Do you want to move acceptance of the councillor's report?
I'll move acceptance of all the other councillors' reports. And I had some very important things to say.
Would someone else like to move that Councillor McLennan have the opportunity to go?
I would like to make the motion that Councillor McLennan has the opportunity to state his work that he's done since last council. Thank you.
No, Mr. Mayor, the only things I was going to refer to was appreciate the fact that you have been making some phone calls regarding the Western Forest product situation and Island Pacific logging. We have 150 plus people out of work because of a dispute between a contractor and a main company. And I noticed that Island Pacific is driving the wood out from Island Timbers logging on the Black Powder Road. So some of them are working. I'm just not sure what it's about. It just seems that these things always happen, and the people who suffer, are the workers, and the component of the suffering of the workers is the pension fund, because it's usually a goal to eliminate the pension because that costs the employers money, but when you get to an age where you need that pension, it should be there. So I know there's not many left out there, and the woodworkers one is getting decimated, but I'd like to see it kept for a little while longer. And just to the Bulldogs, they're ending up their season this weekend and hope they make the playoffs so that the society can have a bit more money too, and so we can go and enjoy some more games. But I would like to one other thing is the public, like everyone's already mentioned, 14 showed up to the budget meeting. If you don't care that much about how your money's spent, you should be coming out. Thank you very much.
Do you want to move acceptance of the...
I move acceptance of all them reports.
All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. There's no new business. Now we're on the question period. It's an opportunity for public and press to ask questions of mayor and council. One quick one. All right.
I came this close to not being up here. Questions for requiring a response from Roland Smith V. My understanding was that the decision was to receive that letter.
That's correct.
And the question you asked, I thought, was a fair and a reasonable question regarding management structure review and requesting information regarding the effect of that review on the city's budget resulting from decisions made and those yet to be made. And does City Council intend to respond to him? I think that's a very important question, and I think he deserves a response.
It is an important question, thank you, and he will get a response in time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council, a motion to adjourn is in order.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
All those in favor? Carried.